Sir, the divorce agreement from the safe is here. On their 5th wedding anniversary, in a Western restaurant, the secretary handed the divorce agreement to Xu Yuan. 5 years ago, the day CEO Xiao and Mr. Xu got their marriage license, CEO Xiao, deeply in love with him, had prepared a signed divorce agreement in advance and placed it in the safe. If she ever cheated, Mr. Xu could sign it at any time. Xu Yuan quickly signed his name. He looked at the empty seat opposite him, his expression gloomy. Give the divorce agreement to Lawyer Li, and then book a hotel. Prepare the wedding venue in advance. The secretary paused, tentatively asking, whose name should I put down for the bride and groom? Xiao Yi and Cheng Yiyang. The secretary was silent for a few seconds. Chung Yang was CEO Zhao's first love. Her voice trembled as she continued to ask, Sir, when should the wedding be held? Xu Yuan slowly looked out the window. The hour-long blue fireworks display had finally ended, leaving a message in the air. Xiao Yi Xu Yuan, happy 5th anniversary. Xu Yuan retracted his gaze and pursed his lips. Hold the wedding in 7 days. Also, book a flight to Norway for me for that day. Norway. The secretary was stunned for a few seconds, hesitantly advising, Sir, wouldn't you like to reconsider? Actually, 5 years ago, on the day they got their marriage license, in addition to the divorce agreement signed by CEO Xiao, Mr. Xu's parents, who lived in Norway, had added a 5 million dowry on the condition that CEO Xiao sign a prenuptial agreement. If Mr. Xu was hurt by the marriage and returned to Norway alone, CEO Xiao would be forbidden from ever setting foot in Norway. At that time, CEO Xiao wouldn't even have a chance to reconcile. I've made up my mind. Xu Yuan shook his head. 7 days later would be his birthday. He would leave Xiao Yi, fly to Norway, and arrange a wedding for her and Cheng Yiyang, fulfilling their love. After the secretary left, Xu Yuan's phone suddenly vibrated. A message popped up. It was Xiao Yi, using the company's Weibo account, posting a photo of the blue fireworks and tagging him. Husband, happy 5th anniversary, love you forever. Less than a minute after the Weibo post, the number of comments reached 999 plus. So envious. I was wondering why Linsheng had an hour-long blue fireworks display tonight. It turns out it was CEO Xiao putting it on for her husband. 5 years of marriage, and CEO Zhao's displays of affection are still so extravagant every year. I heard that last year, when CEO Xiao returned to the ward after a general anesthesia operation, she hadn't fully regained consciousness yet, but when she saw her husband, the first thing she said was, "Your stomach isn't good. Did you eat lunch on time?" It even moved the nurses to tears. Among the many comments, Xiao Yi replied to this one, Xu Yuan is my husband. Loving him and taking care of him is my responsibility as a wife. Instantly, the comment section was filled with envious sighs. And Xu Yuan, the object of this envy, was expressionless as he looked at the empty seat opposite him. Actually, he and Xiao Yi had once been in love. For 7 years, they had never quarreled. For those 7 years, Xiao Yi, the female CEO, had given him both her money and her love. But 1 month ago, the night Xiao Yi was on a business trip, he discovered she had been unfaithful. That night, Xiao Yi sent him a voice message. When he clicked to listen, a strange male voice came from the speaker. 6 months after returning to the country, I just beckoned, and she took the bait. Tonight, she prepared blue fireworks for me. I don't like blue. To avoid waste, use them for your wedding anniversary. At that time, he didn't know who this man was. Until 2 weeks ago at a party, Xiao Yi walked into the private room with this man. Xiao Yi introduced him as her distant relative, a cousin. Chung Yang, with a refined and handsome face, greeted him with a hearty smile. Hi, I've been back in the country for over 6 months and finally get to meet my cousin-in-law. The man's magnetic and familiar voice made Xu Yuan's mind go blank. Later, he couldn't stand it and left early. Xiao Yi came home in the middle of the night, and he received a message from an unknown number. The rooftop tonight was too exciting. I didn't control my strength and left marks on her. I have to say, my ex's little sister is still so enchanting, willing to cooperate with any position. Xu Yuan looked at Xiao Yi, who was passed out on the bed. 2 buttons of her blouse were undone, and her chest was covered in scratches. And the white shirt she was wearing was the female version of the matching couple shirts he had custom-made for their wedding anniversary last year. On the collar, he had personally embroidered his wife's abbreviation, wife. That night, when Xiao Yi received the shirt, she was so moved that she took his hand and promised him, Xu Yuan, from now on, when I wear this shirt you gave me, I will remind myself to stay away from other men, and I will remain faithful to you. Now, this English word had the lingering scent of lovemaking. Today was their 5th wedding anniversary. He arrived at the Western restaurant first. 5 minutes later, he received a call from Xiao Yi. She said she was preparing a surprise for him and couldn't make it to the candlelight dinner, so he should watch the fireworks first. Xiao Yi hung up after she finished. 2 minutes later, he received a photo from her on WeChat. He opened it and saw her having a candlelight dinner with Cheng Yiyang. Flowers, red wine, extremely romantic. This Weibo post declaring love must have been posted by Xiao Yi while nestled in Cheng Yiyang's arms, right? Xu Yuan ignored Xiao Yi's public display of affection. He got up, grabbed his bag, and went home. Back in the bedroom, he asked the maid for a pair of scissors. Xu Yuan took out his custom-made male couple shirt and cut it into shreds. Then he cut their marriage certificate into pieces. He put these into a gift box and wrote "second marriage gift" on it. Just as Xu Yuan finished this, he turned around and bumped into Xiao Yi, who had just returned. With a gentle expression, she took his hand and led him downstairs. Honey, I've prepared a surprise for you. Come down and see. Xu Yuan went downstairs and saw a large container truck. On the truck was a giant dark blue gift box. Xiao Yi clapped her hands, and the giant gift box automatically opened. Balloons and confetti rose into the air, revealing a slate-gray Maybach. 2 staff members quickly held up a banner for Mr. Xu Yuan. This scene made the surrounding onlookers envious. Xiao Yi took out the Maybach key and handed it to Xu Yuan, saying affectionately, Honey, you mentioned wanting a new car last time, and I remembered. As your wife, naturally, I want to buy you everything you want. As Xu Yuan reached out to take the car key, he noticed a hickey on the right side of Xiao Yi's neck. Although it had been covered with concealer, the mark was still visible upon closer inspection. He felt a wave of nausea and frowned deeply. What's wrong? Don't you want the Maybach? Or don't you like slate gray? Xiao Yi noticed Xu Yuan's unusual behavior. Her eyes filled with concern. Xu Yuan shook his head, staring at her with red eyes. The car is great. What he didn't want wasn't the Maybach, it was her. Hearing this, Xiao Yi breathed a sigh of relief. When they walked back to the bedroom, Xiao Yi noticed a gift box on the dressing table. She was about to look when Xu Yuan quickly covered the words with his hand. Husband, is this a surprise you've prepared for me? A hint of joy surfaced in Xiao Yi's dark eyes. Xu Yuan tugged at the corners of his lips, forcing a smile, and said, Yes, but I can't give it to you yet. I'm preparing a second gift. I'll give you both gifts together in 7 days. Knowing you, you'll probably like it very much. A double surprise in 7 days? Xiao Yi felt a flicker of anticipation, but after a moment of thought, she started muttering to herself, trying to recall what day it was in 7 days. Suddenly, it dawned on her. After leaving the bedroom, she called her male assistant. I almost forgot Xu Yuan's birthday is in 7 days. Go ahead and arrange a grand birthday banquet for him. Yes, the bigger the better. He throws a big party for my birthday every year. I can't neglect his. While Xiao Yi was on the phone, she didn't notice Xu Yuan standing at the bedroom door, his face frighteningly cold. They had been in love for 7 years, and Xiao Yi had never forgotten her own birthday. This year, with Cheng Yiyang's return, she had completely forgotten about it. Good. He also wanted to see what expression she would have when the birthday boy didn't show up at the meticulously planned birthday banquet. Xu Yuan took out his phone and sent a message to his secretary. Find out which hotel Xiao Yi is holding my birthday banquet at. Arrange the wedding venue on the floor above the banquet hall. Yes, sir. Xu Yuan turned to go take a shower. Xiao Yi was about to walk back into the bedroom when she received another call from her male assistant. Ms. Xiao, don't forget to accompany Mr. Xu to eat barbecue at the university gate today. He'll be quite upset if he doesn't get to eat it. Right, I almost forgot. Order the barbecue according to Xu Yuan's preferences, and I'll take him there. After Xiao Yi finished speaking, she hurriedly pushed open the bedroom door. Xu Yuan had heard these two sentences clearly. Xiao Yi took the bathrobe from his hand and placed it aside. Xu Yuan, let's go eat barbecue at the university gate. I've already asked the owner to prepare it. It'll be ready when we get there. The barbecue stall at the university gate was his favorite during his college years. Due to a small incident, he and Xiao Yi first met in front of the barbecue stall. They got married 2 years after they started dating, and every year on their anniversary, Xiao Yi would accompany him to eat barbecue. Xiao Yi used to prepare everything in advance, but now she needed to be reminded by her male assistant to remember it. An hour later, the black Bentley parked in front of the small barbecue stall, attracting a lot of attention. A small-time internet celebrity saw Xiao Yi and Xu Yuan and excitedly ran up with her phone. "Oh my God, I've seen the husband-doting Ms. Xiao." Everyone in the live stream, "Look, the couple I ship is really super compatible. It's rumored that Ms. Xiao accompanies her husband here for barbecue every year on their anniversary. And it turns out to be true." After getting out of the car, Xiao Yi held Xu Yuan's hand and walked towards the barbecue stall. Her sharp eyes noticed that Xu Yuan's shirt collar was not properly adjusted. Under the gaze of everyone, Xiao Yi stopped, stood on her tiptoes, and straightened Xu Yuan's collar. This gesture made the surrounding female university students envious. A bolder one stepped forward and offered her blessings. A billionaire CEO straightening her husband's collar. "So sweet. Wishing you a long and happy life together." Xu Yuan looked expressionlessly at the woman on tiptoe, turned around, and returned a polite but distant smile. Xiao Yi and Xu Yuan entered the barbecue stall and sat at their usual window seat. She looked at the owner at the cash register. "Is the barbecue ready? We want leeks, chicken wings, oysters, and roasted buns, mildly spicy and numb. My husband likes this combination. And 2 bottles of room-temperature cola, please. Coming right up, just grill." The owner had a deep impression of this couple, Xiao Yi and Xu Yuan. She had just told her husband that even though it was past 9 o'clock with their good relationship, they would definitely come today for their anniversary. And here they were. The owner brought the prepared barbecue, her kind face full of smiles. 5 years, Ms. Xiao and Mr. Xu have such a good relationship. Ms. Xiao, when are you planning to have a child? Xiao Yi looked at Xu Yuan, her face blushing shyly. "Let it be, preferably by the end of the year. I also want a little Xu Yuan." Xu Yuan looked down at the barbecue in front of him, silent for a few seconds before saying nothing. Xiao Yi thoughtfully handed him a skewer. Suddenly, a man walked in. He informed Xiao Yi that her car had been scraped by another car and asked her to take a look. Xiao Yi frowned, her face unhappy. "I'll go take a look. You eat first, husband. I'll handle it quickly and come back. Order whatever you want to drink, but don't drink anything cold. Your stomach is sensitive." These considerate words once again made the customers in the barbecue restaurant envious. "Oh my God, President Xiao is so thoughtful. Always remembering that, Mr. Xu has a sensitive stomach. So attentive. I can't imagine how happy I would be if I were Mr. Xu." The owner looked at the silent Xu Yuan and smiled. "Mr. Xu is really lucky. The chance of meeting such a beautiful, gentle, and considerate woman in this lifetime is very small." Xu Yuan smiled bitterly. Yes, the chance is very small. No, he hadn't actually met one. Xu Yuan didn't want to talk about this topic and turned his head to look out the window. Xiao Yi followed the man out of the barbecue restaurant. The man lowered his head and said something to her. Xiao Yi nodded and strode into the black Mercedes-Benz G-Class parked next to the Bentley. That black G-Class looked familiar to Xu Yuan. Last time at the gathering, Cheng Yiyang had made a grand entrance in a black G-Class. The license plate was exactly the same as the one in front of him. It was said to be a homecoming gift from Xiao Yi, costing around 3 million. About the same price as the stone-gray Maybach she gave him today. Xiao Yi was a master at balancing things. Ex and current, first love and husband, she kept everyone happy. Xu Yuan couldn't see what was happening inside the car. He withdrew his gaze as an unknown number called. He hesitated for a moment before answering. A familiar voice came from the receiver. "You've gotten smarter. Know how to get someone to call me out." Xiao Yi's voice was charming, and she continued to act coquettishly. "Did you ask my assistant for my location? I told you I'd come to you after he fell asleep." Cheng Yiyang's voice was hoarse, with a hint of strong desire and a little dissatisfaction. "I'm uncomfortable. The thought of you celebrating your anniversary with him, the thought of what you'll do later, makes me feel terrible." The woman chuckled twice, guessing that he was jealous, and coaxed him. "I've been with you these past few days. I can't handle him tonight. Besides, didn't you just have me 3 times 2 hours ago? Aren't you satisfied yet? I want more. Send him home quickly and come to me. You big jealous thing. Follow us in your car later, and we'll do it in the car. You little vixen, seducing me again." Soon, the sound of sticky kisses came from the receiver. Xu Yuan hung up the phone with trembling hands. He looked at the barbecue in front of him and suddenly felt a wave of nausea. It was as if something was tugging at his heart, making him feel panicked, dizzy, and uncomfortable all over. He picked up his chopsticks and stabbed the chives on his plate into mush. Half an hour later, Xiao Yi returned. She looked at the barely touched barbecue in front of Xu Yuan, her eyes falling on his pale face, and her heart tightened. "Why do you look so bad? Are you feeling unwell? I'll take you to the doctor now." The woman's tone was extremely anxious. Xu Yuan turned his head away, not wanting to look at her hypocritical face. "I heard some disgusting things. I don't really feel like eating." "What did you hear?" Xiao Yi furrowed her brows, anxious. "You don't want to know." Xu Yuan's deep eyes were slightly red. Xiao Yi was confused. She got up and wanted a hug from Xu Yuan, but he dodged her. Xu Yuan strode out of the barbecue restaurant and jumped into a taxi, signaling the driver to take him home. "Xu Yuan, wait for me." Seeing that she couldn't stop the taxi, Xiao Yi hurriedly got into her Bentley and chased after it. Xu Yuan sat in the back seat, looking in the rearview mirror. The scene before him was comical. The Bentley followed the taxi closely, and a black G-Wagon followed the Bentley. After entering the villa area, Xu Yuan got out of the taxi. Xiao Yi followed him out, anxiously grabbing his hand. "Husband, why are you angry? Is it because I want to deal with the car and didn't eat barbecue with you?" Xu Yuan looked up, staring straight at her. The woman's pretty face was full of worry and self-blame, but there was no trace of fear after her infidelity. "Emma," Xiao Yi sighed. "It's my fault for not handling it well. If this happens again, even if the car is wrecked, I will stay with my husband." After a pause, she took Xu Yuan's hand and carefully asked, "My assistant just called. An important client accidentally fell from a building and is critically injured. I have to rush over. Husband, do you agree?" Xu Yuan frowned, keenly catching a flash of anticipation and excitement in her eyes, despite the look of helplessness on her face. So eager to go to her rendezvous, she even made up a lie about a client falling from a building. Xu Yuan tugged at the corner of his mouth, too lazy to expose her. He just calmly hummed in agreement. He walked towards the villa, but when he reached the door, he didn't go in. Instead, he walked straight to the parking lot and watched the two passionately embracing and kissing in the black G-Wagon. Inside the car, Cheng Yiyang's dark eyes were filled with desire. "I put on the butler outfit and prepared a box of barbed condoms. After all these years, I know your kinks haven't changed." A wave of ecstasy washed over Xiao Yi's watery eyes, and her hand impatiently reached into the man's large trench coat. "How many times are you going to take me tonight? I can't wait. Let me see your butler outfit first." Chung Yang held her hand. Seeing Xiao Yi's expectant eyes, his thin lips curled up into a smile. "Let's change the location. Don't you like excitement? Let's try by the lake tonight." Xiao Yi was stunned, her eyes widening. "We're playing it that exciting tonight? Aren't you celebrating my birthday with me tomorrow?" The butler outfit, the lakeside, the special condoms, are all prepared for you. Chung Yiyang's atoms apple-bobbed. The black G-Wagon quickly started and drove out of the underground parking lot. Xu Yuan's phone suddenly vibrated. He received a WeChat message from Xiao Yi. He opened it. It was a location by the lake. Half an hour later, Xu Yuan sat in a taxi, watching the black G-Wagon not far away. Xiao Yi opened the sunroof. Within just a minute, The black G-Wagon began to shake vigorously. Many people stopped to watch, amazed. Outdoor sex, how exciting. TSK, TSK, this beautiful woman sure knows how to play. Lakeside, G-Wagon, butler outfit, tonight's going to be amazing. Xu Yuan watched the shaking car with red eyes, feeling a chill run through his body. He recorded a 5-minute video with trembling hands. Immediately, he sent the video to his secretary, his voice hoarse. On the wedding day, play this video. After sending the voice message, Xu Yuan called his mother. Mom, I'm going to Norway to see you and Dad in 7 days. On the other end of the phone, Sue's mother noticed the tremor in Xu Yuan's voice, and she frowned deeply. Is Xiao Yi coming with you? I'm going back by myself. Okay, don't be sad. Mother Sue's face was grim. She probably knew what had happened and comforted him. Mom will pick you up at the airport. Late at night, Xiao Yi made a lot of noise when she returned, waking up the sleeping Xu Yuan. She was drunk and kept kissing Xu Yuan's face. Perhaps because Xu Yuan had suddenly gotten angry that night, she anxiously murmured, Husband, I love you so much. You can be angry with me, you can scold me and hit me, but don't ever leave me in this life. Okay. Husband, don't worry, I won't cheat. On the large bed, Xu Yuan stared coldly at Xiao Yi. The woman was probably so drunk that she forgot to cover the mark on her neck when she came home. But the love in her eyes didn't seem fake at all. The next morning, Xu Yuan woke up groggily. Xiao Yi squeezed toothpaste onto his toothbrush, handed him warm mouthwash, and picked out the clothes he would wear that day. After Xu Yuan was ready, Xiao Yi went downstairs with him. At the dining table, Xiao Yi's phone vibrated. She glanced at the message and looked at Xu Yuan apologetically. Husband, I won't be back tonight. I have a gathering. Xu Yuan paused while eating his pancake. He knew Xiao Yi was going to be with Cheng Yiyang today and didn't bother to expose her. Okay. After Xiao Yi left, Xu Yuan took a taxi and followed her. 20 minutes later, Xiao Yi drove into a nice neighborhood. Chung Yang, wearing a gray trench coat and a gray scarf, looked handsome and sunny. He saw Xiao Yi's Bentley from afar, waved with a smile, and strode into the car. The two probably cuddled in the car for a while before Xiao Yi drove out of the neighborhood. Half an hour later, the black Bentley stopped at a wedding photography studio. Chung Yang got out of the passenger seat, and when Xiao Yi came up, he naturally took her hand and walked inside. The staff at the door saw them and greeted them enthusiastically. Mr. Xiao and Mr. Chung are here. We've cleared the area in advance. I'll take you to see the types of wedding photos we'll be shooting later. Inside the car, Xu Yuan watched this scene expressionlessly, a chill quickly sweeping through his body. Suddenly his phone rang. Xu Yuan picked up the phone and glanced at it. It was his friend Delin. He answered the call, and Delin's cheerful voice quickly came from the receiver. Where are you? I'll meet you at the tea house. Xu Yuan directly told him the location of the wedding photography studio. On the other end of the phone, Delin was stunned for a few seconds, then wailed, You and Xiao Yi have been married for 5 years, and now you're going to take wedding photos again? Wow, you're getting more and more loving, making us single dogs envious. Xu Yuan was slightly lost in thought and said bitterly, Delin, she's not taking wedding photos with me. Delin was stunned for a few seconds, then realized something was wrong. With another man? Xiao Yi is cheating? Wait, I'll be there in 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, Xu Yuan got into Delin's car. In response to Delin's worried questions, Xu Yuan talked about Xiao Yi's affair with Cheng Yiyang after he returned to the country. Then he played the provocative voice message Cheng Yiyang had sent from Xiao Yi's phone a month ago, pointed to the wedding studio, and smiled bitterly. As you can see, it's Cheng Yiyang's birthday today, and Xiao Yi is going to take wedding photos with him. Delin followed his gaze. Inside the wedding studio, Xiao Yi was lowering her head to straighten Cheng Yiyang's suit collar. Her expression was gentle, her movements cautious, as if she were touching a piece of art. Delin couldn't stand it anymore. I can't take this. I'm going to beat them up for you, to vent your anger. Delin had a fiery temper. He rolled up his sleeves and was about to rush into the bridal shop, but Xu Yuan stopped him. Wait, I want to see what they do next. Half an hour later, Xiao Yi and Cheng Yiyang walked out of the bridal shop. One was in a sharp black suit, the other in a snow-white, cinch-waist wedding dress, hand in hand as they got into a Bentley. After a while, they arrived at the lake. To prevent paparazzi, the wedding photoshoot location had been cordoned off in advance, and the photographer was already waiting. Seeing the two arrive, the photographer flattered them with a smile. Miss Xiao and Mr. Chung are truly a perfect match, a golden couple, the most beautiful couple I've ever photographed. Cheng Yiyang held Xiao Yi's hand and simpered. It's because I have good taste in women. My wife is a great beauty. In the next half hour, they changed into 3 sets of suits and wedding dresses. It was cold in winter, and during breaks in the shoot, Xiao Yi thoughtfully picked up a thick coat and draped it over Cheng Yiyang. When Cheng Yiyang wasn't performing well for the camera, Xiao Yi would warmly encourage him until he got into the groove. After the shoot, Xiao Yi didn't rush to leave. She suddenly knelt down on one knee. As Cheng Yiyang looked on in surprise, she took out the roses and engagement ring she had prepared. You said before that you envied Xu Yuan because when we got married, I was the one who proposed to him. I said I could propose to you too, but you were considerate of my situation and kept saying it wasn't necessary. But I can't let you feel shortchanged. Yiyang, will you marry me? Cheng Yiyang's eyes reddened, and he nodded excitedly. I will. I'm 200% willing to marry you. The surrounding camera crew instantly erupted in cheers. Get together. Get together. Inside the car, Xu Yuan watched this scene with a cold face, his whole body chilled. 5 years ago, when Xiao Yi proposed to him, she was just as affectionate. She was also wearing a beautiful white wedding dress, holding gorgeous roses and a carefully prepared engagement ring. She even choked up and cried when she proposed to him. Xu Yuan, I will only love you in this lifetime. No other man can enter my heart. I beg you. Will you marry me? I swear if I Xiao Yi cheat, I'll die. Xu Yuan let out 2 cold laughs, and as he laughed, he suddenly started to cry. It turned out everything was fake, even the vows. Even sincerity is fleeting. Delin looked at Xu Yuan with heartache and softly said, They're leaving. Should we still follow them? Follow them. Xu Yuan lowered his eyes and slowly looked out the window. He wanted to see where Xiao Yi and Cheng Yiyang were going. An hour later, the Bentley stopped at a Western restaurant. This Western restaurant was in the most prosperous part of Lincheng, and the window seats were extremely difficult to reserve. It wasn't dinner time yet, and there were only a few scattered tables of people. Each table in the restaurant was separated by screens. It was clear that Xiao Yi had taken great precautions. Seeing Xiao Yi and Cheng Yiyang walk in, Xu Yuan first went to the next-door shop and bought a more mature-looking men's outfit, put on a mask and a hat, and then strolled inside. Delin had already arranged everything, using money to secure the table behind Xiao Yi from the person who had reserved it. As soon as the two of them sat down, a middle-aged couple, guided by a waiter, sat at Xiao Yi's table. 2 middle-aged men, around 50 years old, looked like ordinary people. A closer look revealed the older man bore a striking resemblance to Cheng Yiyang. Could it be? Xiao Yi is meeting Cheng Yiyang's parents. Delin gasped. Xu Yuan, expressionless, took out his phone. He found the perfect angle and quickly snapped a few photos through a gap in the screen. His timing was impeccable. He captured the moment Xiao Yi handed a black card to Cheng Yiyang's mother. That damn scumbag is pretty generous, Delin cursed angrily. Xu Yuan lowered his eyes, slowly putting his phone away. Let's go. He didn't want to stay there a second longer. They went downstairs. Delin offered to take Xu Yuan home, but Xu Yuan shook his head. Delin, I'm a mess right now. I want to be alone. Delin didn't push him, just repeatedly reminded him to be safe. After Delin left, Xu Yuan walked alone on the street. The temperature had dropped to -1 degree Celsius, and he was wearing only a thin jacket. But the cold of his body was nothing compared to the chill in his heart. After walking for an unknown amount of time, Xu Yuan's phone suddenly vibrated. It was a message from Xiao Yi. Xu Yuan opened it. 3 wedding photos were displayed on the screen. In one, Xiao Yi leaned against Cheng Yiyang, their posture intimate. In another, they were kissing sweetly. In the third, Xiao Yi was kneeling on one knee, holding flowers and proposing. Chung Yang was smiling triumphantly. We took wedding photos today. She proposed to me in public. I was very touched. She also offered to me my parents. Aside from not being able to get a marriage certificate, we've gone through all the steps of getting married. Who says sharing a wife is bad? I can accept it. It just depends if you can. I'm not losing out anyway. Xu Yuan stared at Cheng Yiyang's arrogant words, not replying a single word. He sent the 3 wedding photos to his secretary, along with the photos he had taken of the 4 of them eating and screenshots of all the chat logs. Release all of this on the wedding day. After doing this, Xu Yuan put his phone back in his pocket. He walked like a zombie, completely unaware of a black car speeding towards him, out of control. Crash! Xu Yuan didn't have time to react and was sent flying 2 meters away. After a long time, Xu Yuan opened his eyes again. The pungent smell of disinfectant filled the air, and he saw a white hospital room. Xiao Yi, seeing him finally awake, rushed to the bedside, her dark eyes full of worry and fear. "You're awake? Are you feeling uncomfortable anywhere?" Xu Yuan's eyes slowly landed on Xiao Yi. Her eyes were red-rimmed as she looked at him with concern and distress, as if she wished she were the injured one. Xu Yuan felt a wave of nausea. The wedding photos of the 2 of them in intimate poses flashed through his mind, and his stomach churned. "Xiao Yi, oh Xiao Yi, which one is the real you? Why aren't you talking? Where does it hurt? I'll call the doctor." Xiao Yi anxiously moved to call the doctor, but Xu Yuan grabbed her hand first. His voice hoarse, he asked, "Why are you here?" Xiao Yi was taken aback. When she received the call from the hospital, she was still having dinner with Cheng Yiyang's parents. She had been terrified and rushed over, leaving Cheng Yiyang's family behind. Thankfully, Xu Yuan wasn't seriously injured. "I was having dinner with a client tonight, working on a big deal. The hospital notified me about your accident, so I rushed over." Xu Yuan slightly narrowed his eyes, staring directly at her. "Just back from a client?" "Yes, Xu Yuan. I'm so tired." Xiao Yi rubbed her brow. Xu Yuan slowly closed his eyes and said nothing more. Xiao Yi sat beside him, keeping him company. Not long after, her phone suddenly rang. She decisively hung up, but the other party persistently called again. Xiao Yi muted the ringer and lowered her head to text. A minute later, her expression agitated. She found an excuse and hurriedly left. Shortly after Xiao Yi left, Delin quickly came to visit Xu Yuan. However, his complexion wasn't good. "Guess who I ran into upstairs?" Seeing Delin, Xu Yuan sat up halfway, thought for a few seconds, and guessed. "Xiao Yi." Delin curled his lip, his face full of disgust. "The 3rd floor of this hospital is the men's department. I took the elevator up, and as soon as the elevator doors opened, I saw Xiao Yi and Chung Yang. I felt something was off, so I followed the crowd out of the elevator. I saw Cheng Yiyang holding Xiao Yi's pregnancy test report, grinning from ear to ear, telling her she's going to be a mother." Xu Yuan was slightly stunned. He looked down thoughtfully, with no sign of displeasure on his face. "Xiao Yi is pregnant." Delin felt that Xu Yuan was acting strangely, but he couldn't put his finger on what was wrong. He leaned closer to Xu Yuan and touched his forehead. "You're not angry?" "No. You don't have a fever, and your brain isn't fried either." Xu Yuan smiled slightly, his pale lips parting. "You don't know, Xiao Yi has a medical condition. The doctor said she can't have children. 3 years ago, they tried to conceive for a year, but Xiao Yi couldn't get pregnant. He thought it was his problem and made an appointment to go to the hospital for a checkup. Xiao Yi, worried about his psychological pressure, accompanied him for the examination. The results showed that Xiao Yi had infertility. He didn't sleep all night, persuading himself to accept the fact that he would be childless for the rest of his life, as long as Xiao Yi loved him. He even worried about affecting Xiao Yi's self-esteem and career, so he asked Dr. He to help conceal her condition, telling everyone that he needed to recuperate before Xiao Yi could conceive. Now, Xiao Yi was thrilled to be a mother, making his careful concealment over the past 3 years seem particularly foolish. Holy crap, what a bombshell! Delin was so excited he almost jumped up. He rubbed his hands together and raised an eyebrow. I have an idea, Xu Yuan. You're going to Norway to settle down in 5 days, so let's pretend we don't know anything. Xiao Yi's pregnancy is most likely a lie concocted by Cheng Yiyang. We'll see how Cheng Yiyang handles it when the time comes. We'll watch his performance, and when the opportunity is right, we'll send Xiao Yi her medical records. I want to see if she'll explode when she learns the truth. The next morning, Xiao Yi didn't come to the hospital. In the afternoon, the secretary came to Xu Yuan's ward. After reporting on the wedding preparations, she hesitantly looked at Xu Yuan. Speak frankly. Xu Yuan frowned slightly. The secretary carefully looked at Xu Yuan and whispered, "At noon, Miss Xiao asked me to deliver some documents to the villa. When I arrived, I saw Cheng Yiyang sitting on the sofa in the living room of your villa, Mr. Xu, wearing pajamas. Mr. Xu, you've always been very good to me. I couldn't stand it, so I wanted to tell you." A chill rose from the soles of his feet, and Xu Yuan's face turned slightly cold. He was still hospitalized, and Cheng Yiyang couldn't wait to move into their home? No wonder Xiao Yi specifically told him last night to be sure to inform her before he was discharged, so she could pick him up. I understand. Thank you. Xu Yuan picked up his phone from the table and opened the surveillance footage. The screen was pitch black. Xiao Yi had covered the camera beforehand. Xu Yuan frowned, looking at his secretary, who hadn't left yet. Tonight, I'll have someone distract Xiao Yi and Cheng Yiyang. You arrange for someone to install surveillance cameras. Be discreet. Yes, sir. At 10 p.m., Xiao Yi arrived at the ward. Looking at Xu Yuan in the hospital bed, her watery eyes were full of apology. Husband, did you ask me to come because you miss me? Sorry, I was busy today. Xu Yuan furrowed his brow and interrupted her directly, giving her an out. I know. You were preparing my birthday banquet. That's why you came to see me so late. Xiao Yi paused, then smiled and took Xu Yuan's hand, interlacing their fingers. My husband knows me best. Xu Yuan stared at Xiao Yi, continuing along with her words. Yes, I know you. I know everything you do. Xiao Yi's heart skipped a beat, murmuring. Xu Yuan. She was about to say something when a nurse happened to push in a treatment cart to change Xu Yuan's foredrip. The next day, Xu Yuan opened the surveillance footage. In the villa, Cheng Yiyang and Xiao Yi were having lunch together. Cheng Yiyang was sitting in his usual seat. Xiao Yi was acting coquettishly, saying she was pregnant and refusing to eat. Cheng Yiyang patiently coaxed her to eat, spoonful by spoonful. Be good, take care of yourself, and give birth to our baby. Xiao Yi's pink lips curved upwards, her face full of happiness. After the meal, Cheng Yiyang went upstairs. Xiao Yi called the servants over and instructed them in a low voice. Yang doesn't have an official title, so it's normal for him to have a bad temper sometimes. You all need to be more tolerant. Also, regarding Yang moving in, no one is to tell Xu Yuan when he returns. Yes, madam. Xu Yuan calmly watched the surveillance footage. He looked away and began instructing his secretary to prepare wedding invitations. He would provide a list of invitees today, 3 days before his planned departure. Early in the morning, Xiao Yi came to visit Xu Yuan with pork rib soup. I had the housekeepers specially stew this. It's your favorite lotus root, yam, and pork rib soup. Try it. Okay. Xu Yuan didn't refuse, eating it one small mouthful at a time. Half an hour after Xiao Yi left, Xu Yuan opened the surveillance footage. In the living room, Cheng Yiyang was watching prenatal education videos with Xiao Yi. He stroked Xiao Yi's belly, his face full of tenderness. Wife, your big eyes are beautiful. The baby's eyes should be like yours. Xiao Yi's pink lips curved upwards. Your facial features are handsome. The baby's face can be like yours. That evening, Lawyer Li came to the ward. Sir, your divorce agreement with Ms. Xiao has taken effect. Thank you. Xu Yuan looked at the divorce agreement, then turned to his secretary. Make a copy and put it in the second wedding gift box. The 7-year torment was finally over. 2 days before his planned departure. Early in the morning, Xiao Yi came to the ward with a bouquet of sunflowers and a jade Buddha pendant she had spent a fortune on. Looking at Xu Yuan, who was recovering well, she put the pendant on him, her pretty face full of smiles. You could be discharged tomorrow. I asked a master for this Buddha pendant last night. It's for your safety. Xu Yuan looked at the Buddha pendant on his neck, his handsome face slightly hardening. Last night, Chung Yang had appendicitis and needed a minor operation. Xiao Yi, worried about him, sent him to the hospital and then rushed to get a safety charm. His jade Buddha pendant was bought incidentally. As soon as Xiao Yi left, the secretary arrived at the ward. "Sir, the invitations have been written. After you board the plane, we will have someone send out the electronic invitations." He paused, then hesitantly said, "CEO Xiao just paid a high price for the villa behind yours." Xu Yuan's eyebrows furrowed slightly. "Isn't that villa always occupied?" The secretary shook his head subtly and cautiously said, "Yes, sir, but so Xiao offered a high price and a large contract, persuading the family to move out. I heard that the villa is only in Cheng Yiyang's name. It's a gift for him to get Madame pregnant." Xu Yuan pursed his lips, his dark eyes full of coldness. Xiao Yi was preparing a love nest for another man. In the evening, through surveillance footage, Xu Yuan saw Cheng Yiyang reluctantly directing the servants to pack his belongings and move to the villa behind theirs. Today was Xu Yuan's last day before leaving. Early in the morning, Xiao Yi came to pick Xu Yuan up from the hospital. In the car, she thoughtfully fastened Xu Yuan's seatbelt and softly said, "Xu Yuan, today is your birthday. I prepared the birthday banquet. It will start promptly at 7 o'clock tonight. Remember to invite your friends." "Okay." The black car drove into the villa area. After 4 days, Xu Yuan returned to this home. Everything was just as it was the day he was hospitalized, without any changes, as if Chung Yang had never been there. Xu Yuan walked into the master bedroom. There was an electric shaver on the dressing table. He glanced at it casually. It was a name brand costing almost 10,000 yuan. This deliberately left-behind shaver felt more like a different kind of demonstration. Xu Yuan hadn't been in the master bedroom long before the servant called him downstairs for dinner. At the dining table, Xiao Yi peeled shrimp for Xu Yuan and brought it to his mouth. Her actions were intimate and tender, just like how Chung Yang had fed her 2 days prior. Xu Yuan chewed slowly. Looking into Xiao Yi's gentle and affectionate eyes, he suddenly asked, if one day you dreamed that I left you, would you be sad?" Xiao Yi's shrimp-peeling motion paused. Her expression tightened as she held Xu Yuan's hand. "Xu Yuan, I wouldn't just be sad. I would go crazy. Don't leave me." Xu Yuan pursed his lips. He wanted to say more, but Xiao Yi's phone on the dining table suddenly vibrated. Xu Yuan glanced over. It was a message from Chung Yang. "The surgical wound is bleeding. It hurts so much. Could something be seriously wrong?" A flicker of panic flashed across Xiao Yi's watery eyes. She hurriedly stood up. "Xu Yuan, there's a small problem with the birthday banquet setup. I need to rush over to handle it. I'll pick you up for the banquet later." She turned to leave, but Xu Yuan suddenly grabbed her hand and smiled faintly at her. "Xiao Yi, goodbye." Xiao Yi turned abruptly. Looking at the calm Xu Yuan before her, she trembled. Xu Yuan's eyes used to be full of her. When did his eyes become so desolate and cold? "Xu Yuan, you..." Xiao Yi wanted to say more, but her phone vibrated again, and she hurriedly left. Xu Yuan went to the master bedroom, took all his documents, threw the jade Buddha pendant into the trash can, and called his secretary. "Xiao, you went to accompany Chung Yang, and I'm going to the airport now. After I board, proceed with the original plan tonight." "Right. Remember to invite Chung Yang to his wedding." "Yes, sir." An hour later, Xu Yuan arrived at the airport. He passed through security and sent his parents a message saying he would be boarding in half an hour. Then, he opened his chat with Xiao Yi. "I've prepared 2 surprises for you tonight. I hope you like them." Xiao Yi replied instantly. "Husband, I'm really looking forward to your surprises. I'm still dealing with the birthday banquet arrangements. I have to be here to supervise everything. Wait for me to pick you up for your birthday." Xu Yuan curled his lips into a smile. "You don't need to pick me up. I'll go to the Jizhou Hotel myself." He wouldn't be going to meet her. The birthday banquet was on the 2nd floor of the Jizhou Hotel, the wedding ceremony on the 3rd. Only by having Xiao Yi wait for him at the Jizhou Hotel, and then having the secretary deliver the wedding invitation, could the 3rd floor wedding ceremony proceed as planned. Half an hour later, the broadcast announced that passengers flying to Norway could begin boarding. Xu Yuan pulled out his SIM card and threw it in the trash. Goodbye, Xiao Yi. From now on, you'll never see me again. At 6:30 p.m., Xiao Yi was waiting at the entrance of the Jizhou Hotel. Guests arrived as scheduled, most of them good friends of hers and Xu Yuan's. Xiao Yi still hadn't seen Xu Yuan. She took out her phone and dialed his number. A cold female voice came from the receiver. Hello, the number you have dialed is powered off. Xiao Yi frowned deeply, a bad premonition rising in her heart. Could Xu Yuan be angry and not planning to attend his own birthday banquet tonight? Xiao Yi gripped her phone tightly, recalling the events of the afternoon. During lunch, she received a message that Cheng Yiyang's surgical wound was bleeding. She left Xu Yuan and took Cheng Yiyang to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctor said that Cheng Yiyang's wound was bleeding due to emotional agitation and lack of rest from staying up late the previous night, and advised her to show him more care. Today was Xu Yuan's birthday. Xiao Yi had originally planned to appease Cheng Yiyang and return to be with Xu Yuan. But in the ward, Cheng Yiyang insisted on clinging to her. He placed his hand on her belly, his face full of paternal love. I want to spend time with the baby. Just sit here at the hospital for a while. Xiao Yi's face was slightly cold, and she refused verbally. No, it's Xu Yuan's birthday today. I have to celebrate with him. But just as she was about to leave, Cheng Yiyang lay on his side in the hospital bed. His tall body curled into a ball, and he began to cry out in pain, crying out that he wanted to be with the baby. Xiao Yi eventually softened and compromised, spending the entire afternoon with Cheng Yiyang. It wasn't until just before the banquet that she managed to coax Cheng Yiyang to let her leave by promising him a surprise that evening. But when Xiao Yi rushed to the Jizhou Hotel, she found she couldn't reach Xu Yuan. Husband, why is your phone off? Xiao Yi was anxious, dialing his number several times, only to be told that his phone was powered off. The secretary had been waiting for a long time. She looked down at her watch, holding a gift box labeled second wedding gift, and walked over to Xiao Yi. Ms. Xiao, Mr. Xu has prepared 2 surprises for you tonight. Would you like to open the gift box now? She was about to open it when she suddenly noticed 4 large characters written on the gift box. Second marriage gift. Xiao Yi's face darkened, her tone suddenly turning cold. Why does it say second marriage gift? Did you take the wrong one? The secretary looked at Xiao Yi and shook her head. President Xiao, I didn't take the wrong one. This is the gift box Mr. Xu gave me. A bad premonition suddenly rose in Xiao Yi's heart. She handed the gift box back to the secretary, frowning and taking 2 steps back, as if the gift box was some kind of terrifying beast. Then, she called the villa's housekeeper, asking about Xu Yuan's whereabouts. Has Xu Yuan gone out? Send him over to the birthday party. On the first floor of the villa, the housekeeper cautiously replied, Madam, Mr. Xu left with a suitcase 6 hours ago. Xiao Yi's heart jolted. Her pupils shrank sharply, and her heart pounded. What did you say? Where did he go with his suitcase? Why didn't you tell me beforehand? The helpless voice of the housekeeper came from the other end of the phone. Before leaving, Mr. Xu said some parting words. He said he thanked us for our efforts these past 5 years and gave each of us a red envelope with 5,000 yuan. Mr. Xu specifically instructed us not to report his departure to you. Xiao Yi's head ached intensely. Something seemed to be forcibly ripped away from her heart, leaving an unbearable ache. She wanted to rush back to the villa, but the current birthday party made it impossible for her to leave. Go to the master bedroom now and check the first drawer of the table on the left side of the bed. See if Xu Yuan's documents are still there. The housekeeper immediately went upstairs and opened the drawer Xiao Yi mentioned. He rummaged carefully and reported nervously, Madam, there are only your documents in the drawer. Mr. Xu's ID card, passport, and driver's license are all gone. Also, after you left at noon, Mr. Xu had someone move all his belongings. From what he said, he intends to donate everything to the orphanage. Xiao Yi was lost in thought for a few seconds. The hand holding her phone trembled violently, and a hint of imperceptible tension, even fear, flashed through her watery eyes. Xu Yuan's documents were gone, and he had donated all his belongings before leaving? Could it be that he wanted to leave her on his birthday to embrace a new life? Impossible. Xiao Yi hung up the phone and desperately opened WeChat, sending a message to Xu Yuan. Husband, didn't we agree to celebrate our birthday together? Don't be angry. Where are you? I'll pick you up. As soon as she clicked send, an exclamation mark popped up on the phone screen. Xu Yuan had blocked her. Xiao Yi stared blankly at the phone and stubbornly sent another husband. The chat page reminded her again that she had been blocked. The secretary had been standing by the side, quietly watching Xiao Yi. She presented the second marriage gift again and softly reminded, President Xiao, mister. So wants you to open the gift box. His answer is inside. Only then did Xiao Yi look at the gift box again. Her mind was in chaos, almost numbly opening the box. What came into view were strips of couple shirts that had been cut into shreds. On the topmost collar scrap, Xu Yuan had hand-stitched the word husband. Xiao Yi carefully picked up the collar scrap with husband sewn on it, nearly losing her balance and falling to the ground. This is the gift Xu Yuan wanted to give me today? Impossible. Who's playing a prank? He couldn't have cut up his couple shirts. A year ago, on their 4th wedding anniversary, Xu Yuan had given her a custom-made women's couple shirt. He looked at her tenderly, his dark eyes full of love. Xiao Yi, in my heart, you are my wife and I am your husband. I enjoy every day with you. However, if one day you change your heart, and I am disappointed in you, disappointed in this marriage, I will personally destroy these things and leave you forever. Xiao Yi stood frozen in place, like a person whose soul had been taken away. Xu Yuan had personally cut up the couple shirts. Could it be that he knew everything about her and Cheng Yiyang? The secretary beside her, seeing that Xiao Yi hadn't moved for a long time, reminded her, President Xiao, there's more underneath. Xiao Yi hurriedly picked up the shredded fabric and put it aside. On the second layer of the gift box, the shredded marriage certificate was immediately revealed. Xu Yuan had even cut up their marriage certificate. Xiao Yi's hands trembled as she tried to piece the certificate back together. From the corner of her eye, she saw the divorce agreement at the very bottom. Her movements paused. She picked up the divorce agreement and carefully looked it over. After confirming it was Xu Yuan's handwriting, Xiao Yi looked at the secretary beside her and asked hoarsely, He asked you to take the signed divorce agreement from the safe? The secretary nodded, reporting truthfully, Mr. Xu contacted lawyerly a long time ago. This divorce agreement has already taken effect. It was just one sentence, but Xiao Yi seemed to have suffered a major blow, her petite body swaying unsteadily. She lowered her head, touching the divorce agreement, murmuring to herself, Impossible. This divorce agreement must be fake. Xu Yuan must be joking with me. Why would he suddenly leave me for no reason? Looking at the near collapse of the woman before her, the secretary pointed upstairs and said, President Xiao, mister. Xu has prepared a second surprise for you on the 3rd floor. I'll take you there now. Xiao Yi frowned deeply, feeling extremely resistant. I won't go. She was afraid of the surprise Xu Yuan had prepared, something that would terrify and despair her. The secretary lowered her eyes. Mister, Xu instructed that if you were unwilling to go upstairs, I should convey his original words to you. He said, this is the last surprise he will prepare for you. Whether you accept it or not is entirely up to you. Xiao Yi's face was extremely pale. After hesitating for a moment, she decided to go upstairs. The secretary followed behind Xiao Yi. The moment the elevator doors closed, she clicked send on an invitation on her phone. At the same time, in the banquet hall on the 2nd floor, the guests' phones all vibrated simultaneously. Everyone looked down at their phones, their expressions unanimously surprised. What's going on? I received a wedding invitation for Xiao Yi and Cheng Yiyang. Who is Cheng Yiyang? Today is Xu Yuan's birthday banquet. Wasn't it prepared by Xiao Yi for him? Could it be they've already divorced? Feels like we're about to witness some major drama. Come on, let's go up to the 3rd floor and see. The guests swarmed towards the 3rd floor. Meanwhile, on the 3rd floor of the Jizhou Grand Hotel, as soon as Xiao Yi stepped out of the elevator, she saw stands lining both sides of the corridor, displaying wedding photos she had just taken with Cheng Yiyang. A banner hung directly above the banquet hall entrance. Congratulations to Xiao Yi and Cheng Yiyang on their happy marriage. Xiao Yi's face turned livid as she looked at the scene before her. Who was so bold as to presume to arrange her wedding with Cheng Yiyang? Suddenly, she thought of something and abruptly turned to ask the secretary, "Could this be the surprise Xu Yuan prepared for me?" The secretary lowered her eyes and pointed towards the hall inside, guiding her to walk in. "President Xiao, the real surprise is inside." Xiao Yi's mind went blank for a few seconds. She didn't know how she walked into the hall. She only knew that when she reached the wedding scene, she was as if struck by lightning. The scene before her completely robbed her of the ability to think. On the huge screen, her divorce agreement with Xu Yuan, the 99 wedding photos she took with Cheng Yiyang, and the photos of her having dinner with Cheng Yiyang's parents were displayed one after another. Xiao Yi stumbled, falling dazedly onto a chair beside her. She began to recall the details of her interactions with Xu Yuan these past few days. Xiao Yi finally realized that Xu Yuan had probably known about Cheng Yiyang's existence for a long time. Otherwise, Xu Yuan's eyes wouldn't have been so desolate when she left at noon. His goodbye now sounded more like a farewell. She foolishly thought she had hidden it well. But she and Cheng Yiyang were only physically involved, not emotionally. Xu Yuan had truly misunderstood her. Xiao Yi looked at the secretary again, sadness lacing her voice. "Where did Xu Yuan go?" The secretary still shook his head. "I'm sorry, sir instructed me not to say." Just then, a figure ran in through the doorway. Chung Yang, dressed in a groom's suit, walked into the wedding venue. Looking at the wedding photos projected on the big screen, his handsome face was filled with excitement, without a trace of the weakness he'd shown at the hospital that afternoon. "The surprise you mentioned is holding a wedding with me? Xiao, I love it." In contrast to Cheng Yiyang's excitement, Xiao Yi's face was dark. "Who told you to come? Go back first, don't stay here. I'll talk to you tonight." Cheng Yiyang frowned, his handsome face etched with displeasure. He couldn't wait to marry Xiao Yi. "Didn't you have someone tell me to come here? This is the wedding you prepared for me. It's only right that I attend as the groom." "But Xiao, since you've already divorced Xu Yuan, why didn't you tell me? Were you trying to surprise me? By the way, when will the wedding start? Have you notified my parents to attend? Do you have any other surprises planned for me?" Cheng Yiyang's barrage of questions gave Xiao Yi a headache. She was about to tell him to leave quickly when a large group of people suddenly walked in. The guests entered the hall together, looking around the wedding venue in surprise. They stared in astonishment at the divorce agreement, the wedding photos of Xiao Yi and Cheng Yiyang, and the photos of Xiao Yi having dinner with Cheng Yiyang's parents, all displayed on the big screen. Suddenly, the screen flashed and began playing a video of the lakeside encounter and the car tryst in the black G-Wagon, secretly filmed by Xu Yuan. Someone sharp-eyed exclaimed, "The man in the car isn't Xu Yuan. It looks like this Cheng Yiyang guy." The guests immediately began discussing the wedding photos, some gossiping, some cursing, and some sighing. However, most of Xu Yuan's friends were indignant on his behalf. "So, my good brother Xu Yuan was cheated on during his marriage? No wonder Xu Yuan didn't attend his own birthday banquet today. It turns out he dumped Xiao Yi. I would too. TSK, a seemingly perfect wife cheating. But this home record doesn't look that great. Maybe he's good in bed." Xiao Yi's face darkened. She called the hotel manager and ordered him to turn off the big screen. But the screen flashed again, displaying several chat screenshots. They were screenshots taken by Xu Yuan of his chat with Xiao Yi. The first screenshot was a provocative voice message sent by Cheng Yiyang, lasting 30 seconds. The secretary had thoughtfully included the audio. "6 months after returning to the country, I just beckoned, and she took the bait. Tonight, she prepared blue fireworks for me. I don't like blue, so to avoid waste, use them for your wedding anniversary." The guests erupted in an uproar, and Cheng Yiyang's face paled, panic rising within him. How could that idiot Xu Yuan release the chat logs? Below the provocative voice message was a bed photo of Xiao Yi and Cheng Yiyang sent by Xiao Yi, along with a selfie of Cheng Yiyang wearing a matching couple shirt. The second screenshot was a photo of Xiao Yi having a candlelit dinner with Cheng Yiyang on their 5th wedding anniversary. The third screenshot was the location of the lakeside car tryst sent by Xiao Yi. The fourth screenshot was 3 wedding photos sent by Xiao Yi, along with a provocative message to Xu Yuan about sharing a wife. The guests began murmuring, wondering why the voice in the messages sent by Xiao Yi belonged to Cheng Yiyang. The same observant person who had spoken earlier saw the crux of the matter. I have a bold guess. Could it be that Cheng Yiyang used Xiao Yi's phone to send these messages to Xu Yuan? One sentence cleared up the guests' confusion, while simultaneously igniting their fury. Are outside men this arrogant nowadays? Using the CEO's phone to provoke her husband? This is too much. Even though I'm Xiao Yi's good friend, I can't accept her behavior. I want to curse. Is this homewrecker so brazen because he's never been beaten up before? Many of the guests were Xiao Yi's good friends, but now they were cursing Cheng Yiyang alongside Xu Yuan's friends. Xiao Yi finally understood. Her eyes were bloodshot and terrifying as she walked towards Cheng Yiyang step by step. You said you were playing games on my phone, but you were actually messaging Xu Yuan, provoking him? Didn't I warn you? I can give you anything you want, but you can't let Xu Yuan know about your existence. Didn't I emphasize to you that I only have one husband in this life? And that's Xu Yuan. Looking at the chat history on the screen, Xiao Yi suddenly felt a pang of heartache for Xu Yuan. She couldn't imagine what Xu Yuan had been going through these past few days. Every time Cheng Yiyang provoked him, how devastated, helpless, and hurt he must have been. If Xu Yuan had done this to her, she probably would have gone mad. Xiao Yi's face was livid as she glared coldly at Cheng Yiyang, a chill emanating from her. Cheng Yiyang shook his head. This was the first time Xiao Yi had given him the cold shoulder. He tried to defend himself. He called me first and cursed at me. I couldn't swallow my anger, so I retaliated. If he hadn't cursed at me first, would I have provoked him? Xiao Yi's eyes were bloodshot. She suddenly grabbed her handbag and hit Cheng Yiyang with it repeatedly. You're still trying to make excuses? Knowing Xu Yuan's character, how could he possibly call and curse at you? He wouldn't even bother with you. Cheng Yiyang was hit on his wound. His face paled with pain, and he struggled to squeeze out a few words. It hurts, my surgical wound hurts so much. Don't be angry, it'll scare the baby in your belly. Xiao Yi took a deep breath, retracted her hand, and gritted her teeth. If it weren't for the fact that you're the father of my child, I could kill you right now. You should be grateful that you're his father. Cheng Yiyang gasped for breath, his eyes darting around. The hotel manager rushed up to the third floor. He pressed the remote control, but found he couldn't control the screen, and eventually had to have someone cut off the power. The farce finally ended unhappily. Xiao Yi was left alone in the vast hall. She picked up her phone and called Delin. The moment the call connected, before Xiao Yi could speak, Delin spoke first, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Oh, isn't today so Zhao's big day? Congratulations. Too bad I'm busy tonight and missed your grand wedding. Xiao Yi's face was pale. She explained in a hoarse voice, it's a misunderstanding. Xu Yuan misunderstood me. I'll explain it to him. Misunderstanding? On the other end of the line, Delin sneered. Getting your first love to knock you up is also a misunderstanding? Xiao Yi, you know better than anyone how much Xu Yuan has invested in this relationship. The year Xu Yuan met Xiao Yi, he was a junior in Lincheng. He had originally planned to immigrate to Norway with his parents after graduation. But Xiao Yi's appearance held him back. Xu Yuan, a rich young man pampered by his parents, resolutely chose to stay in the country, only returning to Norway to accompany his parents for a week each year. All this because of Xiao Yi's words during their passionate love, "Stay with me, Xu Yuan." Words that Xu Yuan remembered for 5 whole years. During the 5 years of their marriage, outsiders thought he was just a kept man living off Xiao Yi. But few people knew that some of Xiao Yi's important connections were managed by Xu Yuan. Xu Yuan had high emotional intelligence, and he loved the house because he loved the crow. Over the past 5 years, none of Xiao Yi's relatives, friends, executives, or servants disliked Xu Yuan. Xiao Yi's face was ashen. After a long while, she asked in a hoarse voice, Does Xu Yuan know I'm pregnant? She had kept it so well hidden. Did Cheng Yiyang tell him? On the other end of the phone, Delin chuckled sarcastically. Don't tell me you plan to hide this from Xu Yuan forever? Are you planning to secretly give birth to the child and raise it? At this moment, Delin was glad that Xu Yuan had cut his losses in time. Xu Yuan deserved a better woman. Her thoughts exposed. Xiao Yi's face turned pale, and a shadow flickered in her watery eyes. Where did Xu Yuan go? I'll go find him now and explain to him. Delin narrowed his eyes and suddenly changed the subject. Can you get an abortion? If you can, I'll tell you his whereabouts. Xiao Yi hesitated for a moment, then sighed. You don't know, Xu Yuan has a medical condition. He can't get me pregnant. After I give birth, I'll make Cheng Yiyang leave lynching immediately and never allow him to set foot here again. Delin shook his head inwardly, feeling sorry for Xu Yuan once again. His friend had once foolishly borne the blame for infertility because he loved Xiao Yi deeply. Yet after he left, Xiao Yi was still thinking about having a child. Even if Xu Yuan truly couldn't get her pregnant, Xiao Yi shouldn't have chosen the most hurtful way, bearing her first love's child. I have nothing to tell you, Xiao Yi. One day, you will pay for your actions. Xiao Yi frowned, feeling that Delin's words sounded strange. She wanted to ask more, but he had already hung up. Still unwilling to give up, Xiao Yi started contacting Xu Yuan's friends one by one, trying to find out his whereabouts. Except for Delin, almost all of Xu Yuan's friends had attended the birthday banquet today. They had learned about Xiao Yi's infidelity and affair with her first love. Some directly refused to answer her calls, while those who did mostly scolded her vehemently, defending Xu Yuan. After dozens of calls, Xiao Yi still couldn't get any information about Xu Yuan. Helpless, she had to hire professionals to track him down. The next day at noon, in Xiao Yi's office, her assistant pushed open the door and carefully reported, Mr. Xu, you went to Norway? Norway? Xiao Yi's face turned grave. She closed her eyes, completely falling into despair. 5 years ago, when she and Xu Yuan got their marriage license, Xu Yuan's parents had made her sign an agreement. If Xu Yuan were ever hurt because of her and returned to Norway alone, she would be forbidden from setting foot in Norway for the rest of her life. Otherwise, all of her assets would automatically belong to Xu Yuan. Xiao Yi remained silent for a moment, then said hoarsely, Book a flight to Norway, the sooner the better. The assistant was stunned for a few seconds and softly advised, Ms. Xiao, once you set foot in Norway, regardless of whether you and Mr. Xu reconcile, the agreement you signed will automatically take effect. You will lose everything. Are you sure you still want to go to Norway? Yes. Xiao Yi couldn't wait to see Xu Yuan and explain to him. She asked her assistant to book the ticket and hurried back to the villa. She hadn't dared to go home last night. Now, stepping into the house again, just as the housekeeper had said, all of Xu Yuan's belongings were gone. She walked to the master bedroom and slowly opened the drawer beside the bed. All of Xu Yuan's documents were gone from the drawer. Xiao Yi's heart tightened. Looking at the empty bedroom, a wave of immense despair washed over her. She asked the maid to pack her luggage and printed out the photos of her and Xu Yuan from her phone, preparing to go to Norway to win him back. An hour later, as Xiao Yi was about to leave for the airport, a figure suddenly rushed in. The person embraced her and looked down at her. You're going to Norway? What if our child has an accident because you're too emotional? 10 minutes earlier, Chung Yang had heard the news in the villa behind theirs. If Xiao Yi went to Norway, the assets under her name would automatically belong to Xu Yuan. Chung Yang couldn't sit still any longer. Xiao Yi's face showed a struggle, her small face slightly tense. I'll be back in a week. Chung Yang shook his head, gritting his teeth. Your health is already poor. If you go and argue with Xu Yuan, you'll most likely miscarry. Since you want to leave, then get rid of the baby first. As the father, I have that right. He was gambling that Xiao Yi wanted this non-existent child. Xiao Yi hesitated for a moment, but finally compromised. She thought of a compromise. I'll wait 2 months until the fetus is stable. Then I'll go to Norway to find Xu Yuan. After a pause, she stared coldly at Cheng Yiyang and said in a deep voice, You better pray that I can give birth safely. Otherwise, I'll make your whole family pay. A coldness surfaced in the woman's eyes, and Cheng Yiyang looked a little scared. If Xiao Yi knew that she wasn't pregnant at all, and that the pregnancy test report was forged by him and the doctor. No, he had arranged everything properly. She wouldn't find out. At worst, he worked harder these days. Meanwhile, at the Norway airport, Xu Yuan dragged his suitcase out and saw his mother and father waiting in the arrivals area from afar. Mother Xu looked at her haggard son. Her heart ached, and she secretly shed tears. The son she had poured all her efforts into raising had become so worn and tired after just 5 years of marriage. The light had gone out of his eyes. Is everything in China taken care of? Last night, she and old Xu had learned about the incident in lynching. The news of Xiao Yi's betrayal of Xu Yuan, secretly taking wedding photos with Cheng Yiyang and meeting his parents, had caused a huge uproar. Xu Yuan looked at his parents, knowing he couldn't hide anything from them, and choked up, "Mom, Dad, I'm sorry." His parents were prominent figures in Norway. Now that he had caused such a scandal, they didn't know how many people would laugh at them. Mother Xu hugged Xu Yuan with heartache and rubbed his head. "It's not your fault. It's not shameful to be wholeheartedly devoted in a marriage. Those who cheat in marriage are the ones who are truly shameful and cheap." The usually silent father Xu nodded, agreeing with his wife's words. Yes, a woman like Xiao Yi, divorcing her is a good thing. You come back to Norway, your mother and I will take good care of you. If you don't want to take over the company, you don't have to. The money your mother and I have earned is enough for you to live comfortably for several lifetimes. Mother Xu took Xu Yuan's hand, worried that he might be distraught, and softly persuaded him. "Son, divorce is not a big deal. As our child, you always have the capital to make mistakes." Mother Xu was a famous businesswoman, and her marriage to Father Xu was a powerful alliance. Facing their only child, the two naturally doted on him to the extreme. Xu Yuan's dark eyes reddened, and his long cold heart finally warmed. No matter what, his parents were his greatest support. "Mom and Dad, I plan to study further first, and then take over the company when I'm capable." For the past 7 years, he had been lost in love. In the future, he would focus on his work and spending time with his parents. Meanwhile, in Lincheng, Xiao Yi promised Cheng Yiyang that she would go to Norway to find Xu Yuan in 2 months after her pregnancy was stable. But recently, she had been obviously distancing herself from Cheng Yiyang. Cheng Yiyang asked her to dinner, and Xiao Yi refused, citing a busy work schedule. Cheng Yiyang cried, saying his wound hurt. Xiao Yi immediately called a doctor to come and check him. Cheng Yiyang said he missed her so much he couldn't eat. Xiao Yi replied that 2 missed meals would fix that. Xiao Yi even forced Cheng Yiyang to sign an agreement, promising him a sum of money after she gave birth. The condition was that Cheng Yiyang would never see the child, nor set foot in lynching again. Looking at the agreement, Cheng Yiyang broke down. "Why? This is our child. How can you just say, I can't see them?" Xiao Yi's small face hardened. Touching her belly, impatience flashed in her watery eyes. "You should be grateful you're even the child's father." Xiao Yi forced Cheng Yiyang to sign. She then started posting handwritten letters on Weibo, saying things like, "I regret everything. Please forgive me, husband." To show her sincerity, she even filmed the entire writing process and posted it online. Unfortunately, netizens weren't buying it. The news of Xiao Yi taking her lover to a wedding photo shoot behind her husband's back had already blown up online. The comment section instantly exploded with 999 plus comments, mostly insults. "Delayed affection is cheaper than grass." "Xu Yuan, don't look back. We, the Xu family army, will always support you. Down with the scumbag and the homewrecker. Restore purity to marriage." Ignoring the comments, Xiao Yi continued to handwrite a letter every day without fail. Sometimes it was a letter of self-reflection. Sometimes it was a letter reminiscing about Xu Yuan. Sometimes it was a letter praying for Xu Yuan's forgiveness. After a month, many netizens were moved by Xiao Yi's persistence and began to switch sides. Meanwhile, Cheng Yiyang grew increasingly anxious. Xiao Yi visited him less and less frequently, only once a week. Each time, she would ask him to say a few words to the non-existent child in her belly and then quickly leave. Xiao Yi treated him completely as just the child's biological father. With only a month left before Xiao He was due to leave for Norway. He panicked. If she went to Norway, what if one day she went for a checkup and discovered there was no baby? Desperate, Cheng Yiyang picked up his phone and contacted an old acquaintance. In the evening, a black car drove into the villa area and stopped in front of Cheng Yiyang's villa. A young woman got out of the passenger seat, and the black car immediately drove away. The woman lit a cigarette and swaggered inside. She wore a black motorcycle jacket, her face delicate, her eyes carrying a hint of rebelliousness and recklessness. From near or far, she looked like a carefree, good-for-nothing rich second generation. Seeing Yuru, Chung Yang hurriedly stood up from the sofa, frowning deeply. "Are you crazy? Letting the driver drive in here? So blatant." Yuru approached Chung Yang, exhaling a puff of smoke in his face, her pink lips curling slightly. "What's there to be afraid of? You think Xiao Yi doesn't know about us?" Chung Yang coughed from the smoke, stepping back. Yuru plopped down on the sofa, casually crossing her legs, her eyes scanning Chung Yang up and down. "Called me over, hoping to rekindle old flames?" Chung Yang looked at Yuru with disgust, wondering how his taste could have been so bad. He got straight to the point. "Xiao Yi is not pregnant." "What?" Yuru's eyes widened. Her smoking paused, and she coughed violently. The drama between Xiao Yi and Chung Yang had been widespread, and she knew some of the details. She looked at Chung Yang, her delicate eyebrows furrowing slightly. "Are you crazy? How can you lie to her about something like this?" Chung Yang glanced at her with disdain, murmuring softly, "I wish I could get her pregnant." "Chung Yang, is it you who can't do it?" Yuru looked him up and down, her face full of suspicion. "Enough. I have something to tell you." Chung Yang's face turned serious. He explained how Xiao Yi didn't know she wasn't actually pregnant and about her plans to go to Norway. After listening, Yuru extinguished her cigarette on the table, narrowing her eyes. "So, what you're saying is if Xiao Yi goes to Norway, all her assets automatically go to Xu Yuan, and you won't be able to get your hands on her money. But what does that have to do with me?" Chung Yang looked at Yuru, a strange glint flashing in his dark eyes. "Of course it has something to do with you. Whether you can turn things around depends on this." Yuru frowned, staring at him. "What do you want to do?" Chung Yang narrowed his eyes, looking her up and down. Yuru was his ex-girlfriend. She was from the Yi family. The Yi family's old mansion was located in Fengsheng, next to Lincheng. As the most powerful family in Fengsheng, their business was much larger than the Xiao family's. Unfortunately, when he was dating Yuru, he didn't know she wasn't born to the legitimate wife. The Yi family had strict rules, forbidding children born to mistresses from interfering in the family business. So, over the years, Yuru could only get some pocket money from the Yi family and couldn't touch the family's assets at all. Chung Yang stared at Yuru. In the dim living room, his voice was cold. "Go to Norway and find a way to deal with Xu Yuan." Yuru's cigarette-lighting movement paused, and she looked at Chung Yang in astonishment. The man in front of her clearly had murderous intentions. "What does your business have to do with me?" A chill permeated Chung Yang's handsome face. "Yuru, Xiao Yi is the most likely person to inherit the entire Xiao family business. When I succeed in taking over, you help me, you'll definitely benefit." He paused, narrowing his eyes. "In the Yi family, you'll only ever get pocket money for the rest of your life. Outside the Yi family, you won't be content with a small job, and you certainly won't be able to start your own business as you wish. If you try to start a business, that old woman in the Yi family will do everything she can to stop you. You get rid of Xu Yuan, stop Xiao Yi from going to Norway. When I take over, I guarantee you'll have a comfortable life and won't have to look at the Yi family's faces anymore. Most importantly, I've already planned it all out. I'll arrange a plan to make Xiao Yi have a miscarriage, and then I'll work with the doctor to persuade her to do IVF. I'll make her pregnant with our child. Yours and mine." In the dim living room, Chung Yang's words were forceful. Yuru looked at the moon outside the window and reached out as if to grasp it. Clearly, she was tempted. "Okay, I'll book a flight for tomorrow." Before leaving, Yuru pinched Chung Yang's chin, her voice menacing. "If you dare to play me, I'll kill you." Meanwhile, at the Su family home in Norway, Xu Yuan finished his online class and lay comfortably on the wicker chair on the balcony, leisurely roasting a small stove. For this month, he had stayed away from toxic relationships and immersed himself in his studies. He looked radiant, his spirits much improved. Xu Yuan was about to peel a roasted sweet potato when his phone suddenly rang. Delin's voice was teasing. The devoted girl is posting handwritten love letters all over the internet now. Have you seen them? Xu Yuan frowned as if he had heard something disgusting, his handsome face full of disgust. I'm not paying attention to anything happening in Lincheng. Handwritten love letters? Couldn't they just break up peacefully? You have no idea. The devoted girl writes a love letter every day, even posting videos of her writing them. She's moved the entire internet now. Delin was talking about Xiao Yi's recent activities when he suddenly changed the subject. I heard that Xiao Yi is planning to come to Norway to find you in a month. Xu Yuan paused in the middle of peeling a roasted sweet potato. I won't see her. On the other end of the phone, Delin stirred the honey water in his cup. I know. I'm afraid that when Xiao Yi comes to find you, the agreement from 5 years ago will take effect. But if you don't reconcile with her, she'll lose everything and might do something crazy. Xu Yuan froze, suddenly understanding. Delin was calling to warn him to be careful. Delin truly was a good friend. I'll be careful. After hanging up, Xu Yuan didn't tell his parents about Xiao Yi coming. They had been worried about him a lot recently and were preparing to announce that he would take over the family business. That afternoon, Su's mother returned from the company. She knocked softly on Xu Yuan's door. Come out to dinner with us tomorrow night. Your father, and I want to introduce you to someone. Xu Yuan looked up from his computer and obediently agreed. He had figured out his parents' pattern by now. The people they arranged private dinners with were all prominent figures. The next evening, Xu Yuan drove his parents out. He didn't notice a black car following closely behind. The dinner was at a cliffside restaurant by the sea, overlooking a snowy fjord. Xu Yuan had just sat down when he got up to wash his hands. Passing through the corridor, he was captivated by the seascape and stopped. He loved the feeling of the vast ocean and the cool breeze. Just as Xu Yuan was lost in the scenery, a dark figure suddenly approached. The figure put their hands on Xu Yuan's shoulders and shoved him hard. Xu Yuan lost his balance and instinctively tried to grab the railing, but the man quickly pushed him again. Xu Yuan fell heavily into the icy water. In the freezing sea, Xu Yuan wanted to cry for help, but the icy water prevented him from making a sound. The surging waves almost engulfed him. As he was about to lose consciousness, a slender hand grabbed him. 5 minutes later, Xu Yuan was pulled ashore. He weakly opened his eyes and found himself lying in a beautiful woman's arms. The woman was soaked, her exquisite beige dress clinging to her body. Her hair was dripping with water, but it didn't detract from her beauty. The woman looked at Xu Yuan and helped him up. Mr. Xu, it's cold. Let me take you to change your clothes. 5 minutes later, Xu Yuan had changed his clothes and was warming himself by a heater. The warm air gradually brought him back to his senses. He stared blankly at the woman. You know me? He hadn't forgotten that she had called him Mr. Xu. Lu Wan smiled, having changed into a languid black dress that made her look incredibly glamorous. I know Mr. Xu Guahao. Xu Yuan was stunned for a few seconds, then guessed. Could you be the person my parents arranged for me to meet tonight? Lu Wan smiled and nodded. Xu Yuan looked at the woman in surprise. For his parents to approve of her, she must be wealthy or influential. In the past month, his parents had introduced him to many important people, mostly in their 40s and 50s. It was rare to meet someone his own age. Xu Yuan looked at Lu Wan and said softly, Please don't tell my parents about what just happened. I don't want them to worry. Okay. The two quickly walked back to the restaurant. Lu Wan, very gentlemanly, let Xu Yuan enter first and followed 2 minutes later. Seeing Xu Yuan in a different outfit, Mother Xu asked in confusion, Why did you change your clothes? I accidentally fell in the restroom and got my clothes dirty. Xu Yuan lowered his head. Lu Wan's gaze swept across his face, her lips curving imperceptibly. The meal was harmonious. Xu Yuan learned a bit more about the woman before him. It turned out that the Lu family was in the oil business, and here in Norway, They were doing better than the Xu family. Father Xu hoped Lu Wan would help his son more in the future. Seeing his parents preparing to leave, Xu Yuan made an excuse about wanting to walk around and stayed behind. Mr. Xu, are you thinking of checking the surveillance footage? Lu Wan's watery eyes fell on his face. Xu Yuan was surprised that the woman in front of him had seen through his intentions. With his parents present earlier, there were many things he didn't want them to know. I want to know who tried to harm me. Judging from the force of the push, it must have been a man. Lu Wan stood up and considerately said, I'll take you to the manager. A long while later, in the surveillance room, the restaurant staff exported the footage from that time period and said helplessly, that man covered the camera before he acted. Mr. Xu, the surveillance couldn't capture the moment you were pushed into the water. After a pause, the staff member cautiously added, that man was likely instructed by someone. Surveillance footage at our restaurant entrance shows him getting out of a woman's car. Xu Yuan frowned. Did your restaurant surveillance cameras capture the faces of this man and woman? The four staff members began taking turns reviewing the footage. Half an hour later, all four shook their heads. Sorry, both of them were wearing masks and hats. The surveillance didn't capture their faces. Xu Yuan's face was serious. Send me all the surveillance footage of this woman. He wanted to catch the mastermind. On the way home, Xu Yuan sent the surveillance footage to Delin. Help me investigate this person. What happened? Delin sensed something amiss and asked with concern. Xu Yuan recounted the evening's events, furrowing his brow. If Lu Wan hadn't shown up in time, I would have almost been killed by this woman. Delin's face was grave. Leave it to me. I'll find this person for you. Meanwhile, in the living room of a villa, Cheng Yiyang had called Xiao Yi over a dozen times, but she hadn't answered. He threw his phone onto the sofa with a cold expression. Suddenly his phone rang. Chung Yang eagerly picked it up, his face falling when he saw it was Yiru. What did you say? Xu Yuan was saved? Who was that woman? Cheng Yiyang listened to Yiru recount the night's events, his face grim and terrifying, his dark eyes filled with jealousy. Why was Xu Yuan so lucky? On the other end of the phone, Yiru sat in the car, her gloomy eyes full of malice. He escaped this time. He'll probably be very cautious recently, making it difficult for me to act. Chung Yang's small face was cold as he said in a low voice, Don't act rashly. Wait for the right opportunity. I'll take care of him. Don't worry. Just wait for me at home. As Yiru started to speak sweet nothings, Cheng Yiyang hung up the phone in disgust. Another week passed, and Xu Yuan began to take over his family's business. His parents, worried that he would be overwhelmed, deliberately controlled his workload. But having been away from work for so long, Xu Yuan still felt anxious after returning to the workplace. Fortunately, Lu Wan was there to offer guidance. Don't be anxious. Treat client meetings like a game. Celebrate if you succeed, and if not, just think of it as making a new friend. When Xu Yuan was almost overwhelmed by his busy work, Lu Wan would offer advice. How's your alcohol tolerance? I like to have a little drink to cheer myself up when I'm stressed. Even if we're workhorses, we should still be happy workhorses and find our own entertainment. Her humorous words made Xu Yuan laugh. Lu Wan a workhorse? She was a privileged princess. With Lu Wan to keep him company, Xu Yuan's week went relatively smoothly. But Yiru had long since grown impatient. Xu Yuan's predictable routine gave her no opportunity to act. One day, after a meeting, Xu Yuan suddenly received a call from Delin. Xu Yuan, I found out. Delin's voice was grave. Xu Yuan walked back to his office and closed the door. Who is she? Yiru, Cheng Yiyang's ex-girlfriend. Delin shared some information about Yiru. Yiru, from the Yi family in Fengcheng. The Yi family was slightly more powerful than the Xiao family, but unfortunately, Yiru was not born to the legal wife. Her mother, Chun Yin, was too ambitious, and her schemes were discovered early on by the Yi patriarch, who had people secretly monitor Yiru's every move, preventing her from touching anything related to the Yi family business. Cheng Yiyang also broke up with Yiru after learning this. Later, he went abroad to find another girlfriend, but the relationship didn't last. Desperate, he returned to the country and reconnected with Xiao Yi. Xu Yuan frowned, a thought striking him. They're working together? On the other end of the phone, Delin was silent for a few seconds before replying. That's what I suspect. Iyaru clearly wanted you dead last time. I guess she wanted to stop Xiao Yi from going to Norway. After a pause, Delin said irritably, I don't know what kind of lies Cheng Yiyang fed her. Xu Yuan sat back in his office chair, pondering for a moment before saying, In that case, let's give them what they want. Delin frowned. You want to fake your death? Yes. Xu Yuan nodded, calmly analyzing. If I fake my death, Xiao Yi will come back for the funeral, and I can seize her assets since she likes to pretend to be so devoted. After I fake my death, Chung Yang won't let Iyaru bother me anymore. It's annoying having her constantly clinging to me like a leech. Most importantly, as long as Xiao Yi comes to Norway for the condolences, Cheng Yiyang, who's trying to swindle her money, will get nothing. This is a plan that kills 3 birds with 1 stone. However, to fake his death, he still needs an accomplice. After careful consideration, Xu Yuan went to find Lu Wan for help. You mean, you want me to recommend a way to make someone quickly appear to kill you, but not actually kill you? A strange expression appeared on Lu Wan's delicate face. Xu Yuan nodded. He didn't hide anything from Lu Wan, recounting the events of the past 2 months. Recalling the past, he showed no emotion, as if he were talking about someone else's affairs. I want to completely sever ties with these people and these matters, but I don't want to let them off so easily. Faking my death is the most advantageous method for me. Looking at the man before her, Lu Wan's watery eyes revealed a hint of heartache. She pondered for a few seconds, then seriously analyzed the situation for Xu Yuan. Logically speaking, jumping into the sea is the easiest way to fake a death, but given what just happened to you, you probably won't be going to the seaside anytime soon. Falling off a cliff is too risky. I suggest a car accident. Car accident? Xu Yuan frowned. He thought about it carefully and agreed with Lu Wan. His recent activities were limited to 3 locations, and he was extremely cautious. Iyaru didn't have many opportunities to act against him. Tampering with his frequently driven car was the simplest method. However, how do I lead her to tamper with my car? Lu Wan smiled. Leave it to me. Thank you, Xu Yuan said gratefully. The next day at noon, Iyaru still couldn't find an opportunity to act against Xu Yuan. She drove directly back to the apartment building and found a restaurant to eat. Just after ordering, 2 foreign men wearing black hats strolled into the restaurant. The 2 men looked similar, seemingly brothers. Both were tall and sturdy, with large tattoos on their wrists and necks. From afar and up close, they didn't look like good people. They sat at the table next to Iyaru and casually tossed their wrench-filled backpack onto a nearby chair, communicating quietly in English. This job is enough for us to eat for half a year. It was the older man, almost 40, old William, who spoke. He opened a bottle of beer and guzzled it down. Sitting opposite him, the younger man, nearly 28, young William, rolled up his sleeves. He clinked bottles with old William and drank with unrestrained gusto. Now that we've tampered with the car and it's raining today, that little boy is bound to have an accident if he drives. He paused, then shook his head. You really shouldn't find a stepmother for a child. These stepmothers seem nice to the child on the surface, just for 2 years. 2 years later, when the child becomes an adult and gets a driver's license, the stepmother can't wait to take the child's life. Hearing this, Iyaru's eyes shifted slightly, and a plan formed in her mind. She used to go over and talk to them, but couldn't find an opportunity. Old William narrowed his eyes and added another potent remark. If it weren't for these vicious people, where would we earn our money? Young William nodded and sneered. The more of these people, the better. We can retire after a few more jobs. At this moment, Iyaru couldn't sit still any longer. She got up and sat at their table, smiling ingratiatingly. Brothers, I'll pay for this meal. I have something I'd like to ask you about. Old William was wary and spoke unkindly. Do we know each other? Iyaru shook her head. She put on a fawning smile. No, we don't. I have a favor to ask. As the saying goes, meeting is fate. You're doing one job. Might as well do 2. Please, brothers, do me a favor and take care of this matter for me. After a pause, the smile on Iyaru's face deepened. double whatever he paid you for the last job. Old William and young William exchanged glances. Old William frowned, then gritted his teeth after a few seconds. Deal. Money's money. Iyaru breathed a sigh of relief and clinked her beer glass against the man's. The three chatted for about half an hour. Iyaru showed them a picture of Xu Yuan and finally left, satisfied. As soon as Iyaru left, old William walked out of the restaurant and got into his car. He dialed Lu Wan's number and reported, Lu Zong. Iyaru took the bait. Lu Wan sat at her desk, twirling a pen in her hand. What did she say? Old William recounted Iyaru's plan in detail. Iyaru wants us to wait for the next rainy day, and when Mr. Xu drives to the company parking lot, we tamper with his car. After a pause, old William's voice lowered. Iyaru repeatedly stressed that we should make it as brutal as possible, ensuring that Mr. Xu is taken care of in one go. If successful, she will add another 500,000. Lu Wan stopped twirling her pen, a chill creeping onto her face. She's generous. Old William heard the iciness in Lu Wan's voice, stunned for a few seconds. Lu Zong usually kept her emotions hidden, but this time she didn't conceal them. So, what should I do? Lu Wan thought for a moment, then instructed, just tamper with it slightly. Leave the rest to me. She would arrange a double for Xu Yuan to drive the car, then create the illusion of a fatal car accident. Yes, Lu Zong. 5 days later, it rained heavily in Norway. In the morning, Xu Yuan drove his car to the company's underground parking lot as usual. After parking, he strode towards the elevator. From a car not far away, Iyaru stared at Xu Yuan's back and dialed old William's number. After the morning rush hour is over, you can do it. Yes, Xue Xianxing. Taking advantage of the fewer people during lunch break, old William and young William, dressed in black from head to toe, including masks and hats, pried open Xu Yuan's hood, messed around for a bit, and then snuck away. After leaving the parking lot, old William sent a message to Iyaru. It's done. Iyaru nodded. The final payment has been sent. If Xu Yuan is taken care of in one go, I will transfer another 500,000 to your account. Thank you, Miss C. After work, many cars gradually left the parking lot. Iyaru hid in her car, waiting until 7:30 p.m. when Xu Yuan slowly walked towards the parking lot. He got into the car, started the engine, and drove off towards home. Iyaru quickly followed. Inside the car, Xu Yuan squinted at the rearview mirror and drove straight for a while. On a downhill road with very little traffic, Xu Yuan quickly turned the steering wheel. The car skidded, spun 3 times, and then, without slowing down, crashed straight into a tree. Almost instantly, the front of the car burst into flames. Iyaru smiled in satisfaction, took a picture with her phone, and drove away as if nothing had happened. Half an hour later, Xu Yuan's devastated parents rushed to the hospital and issued an obituary. Obituary. It is with deep sorrow that we announce the passing of our son, Xu Yuan, who tragically died in a car accident at 8:07 p.m. on December 20th, 2024, at the age of 27. He was a loving, kind, and life-loving person. His laughter and love will forever remain in our hearts. May our son rest in peace in heaven. If there is a next life, we will be father and son again. The obituary caused quite a stir. Linsheng Villa? Cheng Yiyang paced excitedly in the living room, looking at the screenshot of the obituary sent by Iyaru. He laughed almost maniacally, muttering, Good, finally got rid of that stumbling block. Xu Yuan, don't blame me. Blame yourself for standing in the way of my fortune. Xiao Yi's office. Xiao Yi was in a late-night meeting when she received the news. Her phone suddenly vibrated, and she picked it up to take a look. Seeing the obituary about Xu Yuan's death in a car accident sent by a friend, her eyes reddened, and her petite body trembled violently. As if something had been ripped from her, she screamed almost hysterically, Impossible! Impossible! How could her Xu Yuan be dead? Her assistant, seeing Xiao Yi lose control in front of the senior executives for the first time, sensed something was wrong and glanced at her screen. Seeing Xu Yuan's obituary, he was stunned for a few seconds and quickly asked the executives to leave. CEO Xiao, my condolences. Xiao Yi's eyes were bloodshot. She staggered to her feet, about to walk out, when her vision suddenly went black and she collapsed. The assistant quickly caught her. CEO Xiao? Someone, get CEO Xiao to the hospital. 2 hours later, Xiao Yi opened her eyes again. The first thing she did was take out her phone and look at the obituary again. Her lips trembled as she sobbed uncontrollably. Xu Yuan. I'm sorry. How could you leave me alone? How can I live without you? Talking to herself, she looked at the assistant with red eyes. Book me the fastest flight to Norway. I want to see him one last time. Just as she finished speaking, Cheng Yiyang, who had rushed over, stood frozen at the doorway of the ward. He looked at the near hysterical Xiao Yi, his eyes unreadable. He hadn't seen her this distraught even when he had resolutely decided to leave her. What was so good about Xu Yuan? Chung Yang walked up to Xiao Yi, grabbed her hand, and hysterically poured out his grievances. You want to go to Norway? Xu Yuan is dead. What's the use of going now? If you go now, you'll come back penniless. Xiao Yi abruptly looked up and viciously threw off Cheng Yiyang's hand. She stood up, her face grim, and walked towards him step by step. Cheng Yiyang was frightened by her menacing gaze. He backed away repeatedly until he hit the wall. Xiao Yi clenched her small fists and pounded him fiercely. If you hadn't stopped me from going to find Xu Yuan, we would have reconciled long ago, and he wouldn't have had the accident. You indirectly killed Xu Yuan. Cheng Yiyang, I'm not in the right state of mind now. After I give birth to our child, I will torture you to death. The woman's voice was fierce, and Cheng Yiyang trembled with fear, unable to utter a word. After Xiao Yi let go, Cheng Yiyang watched her resolute figure as she left. He collapsed to the ground, his dark eyes filled with panic and hatred. Gone. Everything is gone. He had to reconcile with Yiru. Although Yiru was illegitimate, she was still better than Xiao Yi, who had left with nothing. Cheng Yiyang immediately picked up his phone and called Yiru, saying gently, When are you coming back? I'll personally cook for you. The next afternoon was Xu Yuan's funeral. The sky was gray and drizzling. Xu Yuan's parents carried his portrait inside, and many people came to offer their condolences. Xiao Yi rushed in without makeup, her small face haggard, as if she had aged 10 years overnight. Entering the funeral hall, she stumbled forward, knelt directly in front of Xu Yuan's shrine, and kowtowed 3 times. I'm sorry, husband, I'm late, she said, then suddenly slapped herself a few times, choking, I shouldn't have indulged Cheng Yiyang. I should have come to Norway to find you earlier. Did it hurt? Being hit by a car, you must have cried in pain. If only I had been by your side, I could have saved you. Husband, wake up, okay? Wake up and look at me. The mourners around looked at this scene in astonishment. Most of them knew the story between Xiao Yi and Xu Yuan. Rumor had it that Xiao Yi didn't love her husband and loved another man. But now, this scene seemed to disprove the rumors. Xu Yuan's parents stood by coldly, glancing at each other without saying a word. Xiao Yi didn't notice a familiar figure among the mourners. The man wore a black casual outfit and a black mask, staring coldly at Xiao Yi. Beside him, Lu Wan held a black umbrella for him. Seeing Xu Yuan staring at Xiao Yi, her eyes flickered slightly. Heartbroken, Xu Yuan frowned, met Lu Wan's gaze, and his voice was cold. I don't feel sorry for her. I feel sorry for myself. When he received the first provocative voice message from Cheng Yiyang, he hadn't slept all night. That night, Xiao Yi slept soundly with Cheng Yiyang. He celebrated their 5th anniversary, but the blue fireworks outside were leftovers from another man that Xiao Yi gave him. He was hospitalized after the car accident, and Xiao Yi brought another man into their home, sleeping in their marital bed. Shouldn't he feel sorry for himself the most? Lu Wan withdrew her gaze and saw his vacant expression. She reminded him, Still watching? Shall we go for a walk, mister? Su Xinxing. Xu Yuan's lips curled into a high arc. Okay. Just yesterday, he had gotten a new ID card. His name was now Su Xinxing, embracing a new life. A week later, Xu Yuan's parents announced that their nephew, Su Xinxing, would take over the company. This news once again caused a sensation in the wealthy circles. Back in Lincheng, Xiao Yi had been depressed since returning from Norway. She spent her days drowning her sorrows in alcohol, clutching Xu Yuan's portrait and crying. Xu Yuan, my Xu Yuan, you must be lying to me. You're not dead, right? Come back. I was wrong. I won't betray you again. I shouldn't have cheated. During Xiao Yi's breakdown, loyally took the agreement she had signed 5 years ago to handle the property transfer. Since Xu Yuan no longer existed, these assets ultimately belonged to his parents. Xu Yuan's mother didn't coddle Xiao Yi. When she called lawyerly, she instructed, sell everything of Xiao Yi's that can be sold online, her houses, cars, and collections. Don't leave her a single thing. She wanted Xiao Yi to know that the faithful thrive, while the unfaithful decline. Okay, madam. A week later, lawyerly arrived at Xiao Yi's villa. He looked at the haggard woman before him, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. In just a second, his expression returned to normal. Ms. Xiao Mrs. Su asked me to sell the villa. The new owner has signed a contract and taken over today, so please. Before lawyerly could finish, Xiao Yi abruptly looked up, letting out a shrill laugh. You wanted to move out, right? Xu Yuan is dead. This villa doesn't have anything of his left. There's no use for me to stay here. Xiao Yi stumbled out, her assistant worriedly following behind. Recently, she had been consumed by grief for Xu Yuan, only sleeping an hour or two a day. At the depths of her despair, she had even attempted to slit her wrists. Before Xiao Yi could even leave the garden, she stumbled and fainted again. The assistant rushed Xiao Yi to the hospital. Unable to bear it any longer, he dialed a phone number. 2 hours later, a large group of people entered the hospital, led by old Madame Xiao. She walked into the ward and saw the haggard and worn Xiao Yi on the hospital bed, her anger boiling over. A nurse was inserting a needle into the vein on the back of Xiao Yi's hand to administer in 4-drip. Xiao Yi abruptly pulled the needle out. The nurse sighed and inserted the needle again, only to have Xiao Yi pull it out once more. This time, the needle tore the vein, leaving a bright streak of blood. Old Madame Xiao couldn't stand it anymore. She abruptly picked up her cane and slammed it against Xiao Yi. Xiao Yi, kneel! Seeing old Madame Xiao Yi looked as if she had found a lifeline. But the words she spoke revealed she had lost the will to live. Grandma, I want to go down and find Xu Yuan. Will you let me? I want to be buried with him. Can you please talk to his parents? Old Madame Zhao's face turned livid, her usually kind face chillingly cold. She dragged Xiao Yi up, pulled her to the bathroom mirror, and splashed cold water on her face. Look at what you've become. You're the worst of all my granddaughters. Xiao Yi stiffly raised her head and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman in the mirror had sunken cheeks and lifeless eyes, like a walking corpse, radiating an aura of gloom. Since Xu Yuan's death, she had indeed been living a life neither human nor ghost. 5 years ago, she and Xu Yuan had promised to stay together until they were old. But when did she start to change? Was it when she grew tired of their peaceful life and sought excitement? Was it when she saw her friends surrounded by men, frequently changing partners, and felt a stirring within her? Was it when she thought she was hiding it well, juggling 2 men, becoming more and more reckless? Thinking of these things, Xiao Yi slapped herself again. It was all her fault. She had ruined their beautiful marriage. If she hadn't disappointed Xu Yuan and caused him to return to Norway, how could he have died in a car accident there? Old Madame Xiao looked at the remorseful Xiao Yi and sighed deeply. Xiao Yi, the gifted girl in everyone's eyes, had once been her proudest granddaughter. Now, she was suicidal over a relationship. With a stern face, old Madame Xiao instructed the assistant to supervise Xiao Yi as she washed up and changed clothes. Half an hour later, Xiao Yi had finally regained her former appearance and sat before old Madame Xiao, looking refreshed. Grandma? A stack of documents lay before old Madame Xiao. She first threw the wedding photos of Xiao Yi and Cheng Yiyang in front of her. She coughed twice, her aged voice carrying an innate authority. Xiao Yi, you cheated first. I have no face to go see Xiao Yuan's parents. The properties and funds under your name now belong to them. Consider it compensation for your past actions. After a pause, old Madame Xiao took out recent newspapers with news about Xiao Yi and threw them in her face. Take a good look. What is the outside world saying about you? Xiao Yi frowned slightly and glanced at the news. It was all negative. Devoted wife cheats with first love, causes death of innocent husband. Shocking. Pure love goddess plays with husband's feelings. Now full of regret. Cherish life. Stay away from scum. When Xiao Yi and Xu Yuan's relationship first began, there were many CP fans online. Many netizens watched them from marriage to divorce, and knowing the inside story, they all felt sorry for Xu Yuan. A while ago, a netizen posted about Xu Yuan's death in a car accident in Norway. Netizens then targeted Xiao Yi, criticizing her for playing with emotions and pretending to be a pure love goddess. Because the netizens' attitudes were too extreme, it seriously affected the recent stock price of the Xiao Group. Old Madam Xiao looked at Xiao Yi, took a deep breath, and said, "I will issue a public announcement. You are not allowed to interfere in the Xiao family's business for 5 years. This is punishment for your recent inappropriate behavior." The Xiao family motto: be loyal and devoted to relationships and marriage. Family harmony leads to prosperity. Xiao Yi lowered her eyes dejectedly. Her grandmother had punished her by forbidding her from interfering in the family business for 5 years. With so many grandchildren, how many siblings would surpass and crush her in those 5 years? She would most likely lose her qualification as heir forever. But she had already lost Xu Yuan. What use was the Xiao family fortune to her? Understood, Grandma. Old Madam Xiao shook her head in disappointment and left with her cane. In the evening, Chung Yang learned that old Madam Xiao had ordered Xiao Yi to be banned from the Xiao family business for 5 years. He sat alone in the living room, his mind in a mess. Last time, he called Iyuru and said he wanted to cook her a meal to reward her. Iyuru said she would return to the country immediately to see him. But not long after, Iyuru called him again. She said that old master Yi asked her to return to the old residence. After that call, he couldn't reach Iyuru anymore. Now that Xiao Yi was banned from the Xiao family business, he had to speed up his reconciliation with Iyuru. So, Cheng Yiyang called Iyuru again. The same message came from the phone. The number you have dialed is powered off. Cheng Yiyang hesitated for a moment and called Iyuru's best friend, asking about her whereabouts. The other party was silent for a few seconds, then said, "Didn't you know? Iyuru died in a car accident." "She's dead." Cheng Yiyang's eyes widened in disbelief. He didn't know that Iyuru died on the day of Xu Yuan's funeral. Xu Yuan faked his death in the car accident and contacted old master Yi after returning home. He sent the surveillance video recordings of Iyuru's multiple attempts to harm him. Old master Yi was silent for a few seconds, apologized for his granddaughter, and asked Xu Yuan how he wanted to resolve the matter. Xu Yuan didn't ask for any compensation, only hoping that old master Yi would give him justice and keep his survival a secret. That night, Iyuru was called back to the country. The next day, Iyuru rushed to the Yi family's old residence, which was the day of Xu Yuan's funeral. Old master Yi saw her and immediately used family discipline. He whipped Iyuru hundreds of times, forcing her to turn herself in the next day. Iyuru didn't think she was wrong. She blamed all her mistakes on her birth. She believed her only mistake was having a mistress for a mother. In the middle of the night, Iyuru climbed over the wall and escaped from the Yi family's old residence. Old master Yi ordered his bodyguards to chase her. It was pouring rain that night, and Iyuru's car suddenly skidded, resulting in a car accident that killed her instantly. In the empty living room, Cheng Yiyang's handsome face was pale. He thought it over and decided to cling to Xiao Yi's leg for now. After all, his affair with Xiao Yi had been a tumultuous public spectacle. Except for Iyuru, he doubted any wealthy and beautiful woman would want to marry him. Now that Iyuru was dead, Xiao Yi was still a member of the Xiao family, and even a weakened camel was bigger than a horse. Moreover, as long as he stuck to Xiao Yi and endured humiliation for 5 years, she would eventually be able to regain control of the Xiao family's business. That night, Cheng Yiyang bribed Xiao Yi's attending doctor. He instructed the doctor to tell the nurse to add an extra pill that would cause Xiao Yi to bleed vaginally when administering her medication. The next morning, after taking her medicine, Xiao Yi was in such pain that her face was pale and she was drenched in cold sweat. Suddenly feeling a warmth between her legs, she realized something was wrong and immediately pressed the emergency button at the head of her bed. "Doctor, doctor, save my baby." The doctor rushed over and, after an examination, sent her to the operating room. At noon, when Xiao Yi woke up, she learned that her baby was gone. Her eyes reddened, and she suddenly burst into tears. "Gone? Xu Yuan doesn't want me, and the baby doesn't want me either." Chung Yang stood beside her and comforted her. "Relax, we'll have another one." Xiao Yi grabbed a pillow and threw it at Cheng Yiyang, scolding him coldly. "Get out! I don't want to see you." 3 days later, Xiao Yi was discharged from the hospital. At Cheng Yiyang's recommendation, she buried her baby in a cemetery. Looking at the grave, Xiao Yi's eyes reddened. "Baby, it's Mom's fault. I didn't protect you." Cheng Yiyang put his arm around Xiao Yi and comforted her warmly. "We'll have more children." Xiao Yi coldly pushed him away, her voice icy. "Don't touch me, you're dirty." Cheng Yiyang froze, retracting his hand from midair with a gloomy expression. Not far away, Delin sat in a car, watching the two in the cemetery. He called Xu Yuan. "Xu Yuan, I printed Xiao Yi's medical report as you instructed. Someone will give it to her soon. I wonder if she'll regret it when she learns the truth." Suddenly, a staff member walked up to Cheng Yiyang and whispered, "Mr. Chung, there's some more information here that requires your registration." Cheng Yiyang nodded and followed him. As soon as he left, a female staff member walked up to Xiao Yi. She was holding 3 copies. In the distance, Cheng Yiyang saw someone approaching Xiao Yi with documents. He suddenly grew wary and turned back. By then, Xiao Yi had already picked up her medical report with a puzzled look. Name, Xiao Yi. Gender, female. Diagnosis, female infertility. Xiao Yi's pupils constricted, her grip on the report tightening abruptly. Her face was deathly pale as she tremblingly took out the second copy, a pregnancy test report. Name, Xiao Yi. Urine pregnancy test. Result, negative. The third copy was a printout of Cheng Yiyang's bank transfer to the doctor who performed the examination. After reading everything with an ashen face, Xiao Yi stared coldly at Cheng Yiyang beside her, radiating a terrifying chill, as if she wanted to devour him alive. "I wasn't even pregnant? You tricked me?" Cheng Yiyang's face turned deathly pale. He weakly argued, "This is slander. Someone is trying to frame me. You were pregnant at first." He paused, then grabbed Xiao Yi's arm and pleaded, "Don't believe these reports. Someone is definitely trying to frame me. Yes, someone wants to harm me." Xiao Yi, her face grim, flung his hand away and dialed DR. The doctor who had previously examined her, and Xu Yuan. After hearing Xiao Yi's words, DR, he hesitated for a few seconds. "Ms. Xiao, when the test results came out, Mr. Xu begged me to hide your infertility from you. He said it concerned your dignity and career, and if it was revealed that you were infertile, it might affect your inheritance of the Xiao family business. So he asked me to change the test results to show that he had the problem." He paused, then added, "Mr. Xu really loved you. DR." These words reached Xiao Yi's ears, each one like a tiny needle piercing her heart, making it hard to breathe. Recalling Delin's unusual words, Xiao Yi suddenly burst into hysterical laughter. So, her Xu Yuan had loved her so much, to protect her pride and future, to spare her pain. He had even taken on the burden of being infertile himself. She was so damned. She had actually pushed away a man who loved her so deeply. Clutching the test report, Xiao Yi suddenly broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Seeing her distraught and frantic state, Cheng Yiyang got up and tried to slip away. But before he could take a few steps, Xiao Yi grabbed him. She directed the bodyguards behind her to pin Cheng Yiyang to the ground. Xiao Yi raised her foot and stomped hard on Cheng Yiyang. Her voice was low and hoarse, as terrifying as a demon from hell. "Cheng Yiyang, was it fun deceiving me? If you hadn't seduced me, if you hadn't stopped me from going to Norway to find Xu Yuan, he wouldn't be dead. Tell me, should I kill you myself and send you down to apologize to Xu Yuan?" With each word, Xiao Yi stomped on Cheng Yiyang's head. After several stomps, feeling her rage unsatisfied, she picked up a worker's shovel and slammed it down on Cheng Yiyang's head. When Cheng Yiyang looked up again, a large gash oozed blood down his face, a terrifying sight. He spat out, filled with resentment and indignation. "If you weren't infertile, would I have had to fake it? What was so good about Xu Yuan anyway? He wanted to go to Norway. So he went. Why did he have to make such a big fuss after leaving? Who doesn't know he was just trying to harm me? He deserved to die. As far as I'm concerned, Yiru should have acted sooner." Cheng Yiyang realized he had let something slip and quickly stopped. Xiao Yi's eyes were dark and menacing. Staring at Cheng Yiyang, she said slowly, each word distinct, "You told Yiru to kill Xu Yuan?" Cheng Yiyang hastily shook his head, still trying to defend himself. "I didn't." Bang! Before he could finish his last word, Xiao Yi raised the shovel and slammed it onto his mouth. This blow disfigured Cheng Yiyang's face, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Xiao Yi narrowed her eyes, seemingly crazed, and rained blows with the shovel on Cheng Yiyang's head, body, and face. A few minutes later, Cheng Yiyang collapsed, unable to hold on. But Xiao Yi's movements didn't stop. The people who had come to pay their respects watched Xiao Yi's frenzied actions, none daring to intervene. Only when the police and ambulance arrived did Xiao Yi stop beating Cheng Yiyang. When Cheng Yiyang was taken away by the ambulance, he was a bloody mess. 3 days later, Xu Yuan attended a Xu family event under the new identity of Xu Xinxing. He had a new hairstyle, wore gold-rimmed glasses, and a black mask in public. His aloof eyes revealed nothing of his expression. Back in his office, Xu Yuan had barely sat down when he received a call from Delin. Delin's voice was light, suggesting good news. "Karma's a bitch. Cheng Yiyang's sciatic nerve was injured by Xiao Yi. He's paralyzed now, in a wheelchair, and his face is ruined." Xu Yuan's hand paused on the mouse, his clear eyes lowering slightly. "What about Xiao Yi? Is she going to jail?" Delin shook his head, sighing regretfully. "Old Mrs. Xiao wouldn't allow a family member to have a criminal record. She privately negotiated with Cheng Yiyang's parents and settled the matter for $3 million. After a pause, Delin added, "However, Xiao Yi was forced to leave the country by old Mrs. Xiao 2 days ago. She's not allowed to return for 5 years. I heard that after arriving abroad, Xiao Yi seemed to have suffered some kind of major shock. She refuses to eat or drink, and the only thing she does every day after waking up is draw your portrait." Xu Yuan lowered his eyes, his expression cold. "It's finally over." On the other end of the phone, Delin was silent for a few seconds. He knew better than anyone how much determination Xu Yuan had summoned over the past few months to extricate himself from a 7-year relationship and calmly deal with the people and matters involved in this torturous affair. They talked for a long time before hanging up. Lu Wan knocked on the door and entered. She placed a box of pineapple cakes from a very popular and hard-to-get bakery in Norway on Xu Yuan's desk. "Just bought these. Try them." Looking at Lu Wan, Xu Yuan remembered how Xiao Yi had also been eager to please him at the beginning of their relationship, buying him his favorite pineapple cakes. Xu Yuan looked up at the gentle, sunny woman before him, his brows furrowing slightly. "Lu Wan, I just ended a 7-year relationship. I'm physically and emotionally exhausted right now. I need 2 months to myself before I can consider our relationship. It wouldn't be fair to you if I started anything with you now." His voice was low and clear in the quiet office. Lu Wan's pink lips curved upwards as she met his gaze. "No rush. I have plenty of time. Having finally found a man she liked, she could wait and was willing to wait." Xu Yuan stared at her, a strange glint in his dark eyes. After a moment, he picked up a pineapple cake and took a small bite. 2 years later, in a church in Norway, a solemn wedding ceremony was taking place. No more considering. Xu Yuan, his eyes full of tenderness, looked at the beautiful woman before him. Lu Wan held the microphone, making a heartfelt confession. "Xu Yuan, no, husband. You may not believe this, but 3 years ago, I was a staunch believer in staying single. But the day Sue's parents came to my company to invite me to dinner, I saw the photo of you and your mom on her phone wallpaper, and my heart skipped a beat. At that moment, I had only one thought. Yes, it's him. If it's him, marriage sounds good. Do you know? Husband, the night you agreed to go out with me, I was so excited I couldn't sleep. I secretly posted on my moments. Something to do, someone to love, something to look forward to. When you proposed, the moment you raised the ring, I thanked God for giving me such a wonderful marriage. Husband, I swear to you, I will only love you for the rest of my life. Loyalty to marriage is a core value of the Liu family. 10 years later, Xiao Yi came to Norway on business. After checking into her hotel, she went downstairs to eat. From a distance, she saw a figure she knew all too well. Xu Yuan, Liu Wan, and their 8-year-old son were eating together. The little boy looked very much like Xu Yuan, incredibly handsome when he smiled. But at this moment, he had his arms crossed, pouting angrily. "Mommy, why did you drop everything this morning to accompany Daddy to see the ocean? When I said I wanted to see the ocean the day before yesterday, you said we'd go during summer vacation. Mommy, you're so biased." Xu Yuan's lips curved upwards, about to soothe his jealous son. But Liu Wan stopped him with a hand. She ruffled her son's hair, smiling playfully. "Honey, this isn't bias. It's Mommy loving Daddy. He told me he wanted to see the ocean, and if I didn't immediately go with him, I'd feel bad. Her beloved husband. Of course she would spoil him." Xiao Yi watched Xu Yuan, enveloped in happiness, and walked out. As soon as she left the restaurant, tears streamed down her face. This time, she didn't approach him. "Xu Yuan, knowing you're alive makes me happy. I'm sorry, Xu Yuan. Give me another chance in the next life. Let me be the one to love you."